Chapter 1837. Han Dong planned to use the planet of plants that Professor Morgan had left for him to start searching for the remnant pages. That's great. Not only could he get clues about the remnant pages directly from the Void Dominus, but he could also get Bop's help during the journey. Within the same level, no one could compare to Bop in terms of searching for things. Not only did he have knowledge and understanding of the universe, but he also had unique void techniques. In addition, the two of you aren't enough for this journey. It's best to bring Eugenius along. Eugenius? Han Dong was a little surprised. He didn't have a good relationship with Eugenius, and when he thought of Eugenius, his first reaction was that he was too smelly. He'll play a more important role at a certain node or occasion. When you leave the void, go find him. The time should be just right. As soon as he finished speaking, Teacher Yu took a ball of meat bubble from the throne. Its size was about 15% of a normal bubble, and it could be easily pinched with one hand. When Han Dong touched the meat bubble, he was shocked. Buzz! He was directly teleported into the internal space of the meat bubble. It was actually an archive room. Old and new information files were placed on the bookshelves and shelves. Buzz! Teacher Yu's projection also came here and explained simply. Because the danger assessment of the Book of the Dead Souls was beyond what we could bear, it was dismantled more thoroughly. Some of the more stable remnant pages were suppressed in the territories of the Old Kings or thrown into the absolute Forbidden Lands. The unstable parts were directly thrown into the Shattered Dimension. Even I can't accurately estimate the specific coordinates. This information is what I've collected from various sources over the years. The final search is still quite difficult. You have to be mentally prepared. The requirement I set for you is 50%. Not only does it include the collection of the remnant pages, but you also need to learn and master 50% of the remnant pages. After all, your role in this incident is the middleman. Once you lose control and explode, you'll have to face more risks. Thank you for the reminder, Senior. With the clues provided by Senior and Bop's help, I'm confident that I can achieve this goal in a few years. It's just that, before we depart, can you let me stay in the void and learn some basic techniques? In a bit. I will give you a short 10 days of training. Since you are familiar with the brief history of the void in the University of Misha Library, you have the basic requirements. I will personally teach you some useful things. At the very least, it will allow you to ensure your own safety in the Shattered Dimensions. Han Dong's eyes brightened. Thank you, Senior. He didn't expect that not only would his suggestion to study in the void be accepted, but he would also be taught directly by Teacher Yu. 10 days passed. The camera switched to the Kenresta star sector. After the exoplanet celestial body incident, after getting him as broken arm from Morgan, Eugenius had officially passed the first volume of the corpse-eating cult's ritual. It could be said that he had completed his basic training, and now he needed to do more advanced training. According to the demonic book, Eugenius needed 9 corpses that met the criteria. At first, he thought that it would be simple. After all, an evil man like Eugenius could create tens of thousands of corpses in a day if he wanted. However, the 4 words "meet the criteria" were quite troublesome. It was a few hundred times more troublesome than Eugenius had expected. The demonic book itself could be used as a corpse detector. As long as one was close to a corpse, the demonic book would be able to determine if the corpse met the criteria. Eugenius had run through many star sectors and even took the risk to kill some noble hybrid demons. However, the results still didn't meet the criteria. So far, he hadn't even been able to collect a single corpse that met the criteria. He had fallen into a rather impatient state. Currently, he was in a neutral city in the Kenresta star sector, Serene. This city was also known as the City of Rebirth. It was a special city for necromancers. The number of corpses traded here was also the highest in the universe. Many hybrid demons still had basic emotions. They would often bring their dead friends and spouses here in search of a chance to be resurrected. However, only a few could be truly resurrected. Most of the corpses would be secretly replaced, or they would be taken away at a low price, becoming corpse slaves, food, specimens, or research materials for the upper class. Eugenius came here to hide from the limelight and to try his luck. Serene City, Morgue 39, many hybrid demons, after dying of natural causes, would ask their descendants to bring their corpses here and place them together. Perhaps they thought it would be more lively. Eugenius had already stayed in this morgue for 2 days and 2 nights, continuously examining tens of thousands of corpses. The results could be seen from his extremely tired, depressed, and somewhat irritable state. None of the corpses met the criteria. What does this mean? Why didn't the demonic book write it more clearly? How do I meet the criteria? Do I have to collect the corpses of the 9 old kings? I've already wasted too much time. Nicholas must still be growing. If this continues, the gap between me and him will grow bigger and bigger. Sigh, just as Eugenius was lying limply in front of a row of morgue cabinets, sighing. Click! The morgue in front of him suddenly moved. Eugenius shouldn't have been afraid. However, the problem was that he had just examined the corpse in front of him. It was completely dead, and he didn't feel any energy fluctuations of resurrection at all. What's going on? Eugenius pulled the morgue as he used his X-ray vision to see through it. Just as the morgue was pulled open a crack, and he was about to peek into the corpse inside, smack. An extremely cold palm landed on his right shoulder. Because there was no feedback from his perception domain during the entire process, Eugenius was so frightened that he bounced up from the ground and stuck to the ceiling. The eyeball tentacles that symbolized Shogs had already spread out at the first moment. There was even an extremely terrifying corpse-eating crack in its abdomen, ready to eat any living body raw at any time. However, a teasing voice sounded. Eugenius, long time no see. Why have you become so sensitive? 2 familiar people appeared in Eugenius' vision. The person who touched his shoulder was Han Dong, and he deliberately imitated the texture of corpse's palm. At the same time, Bop was also standing beside him. It was also because of the void teleportation that Eugenius didn't notice the sudden appearance of the 2 behind him. If it was only Han Dong, Eugenius, who was holding back his anger, would probably have already started a fight. However, when he carefully recalled the feeling of touch just now, Eugenius' heart palpitated slightly. In addition to the coldness from the palm, there seemed to be a rather deep laughter. It was this laughter that came through contact that made him so frightened that he felt an instinctive sense of fear. What are you doing here? Inviting you to join our team. As he spoke, Han Dong made a rather elegant gesture of invitation. Chapter 1838. If it was Han Dong who invited him alone, not only would Eugenius refuse, he might even start a war with him in the corpse vault. But it was different with Bop at the scene. Whether it was considering the future of the Shugus clan, Eugenius' own development, or their past friendship, he could not offend Bop. Nicholas definitely wouldn't invite me of his own accord. Although this invitation was directly sent by him, it was very likely that it came from Bop's suggestion. It was easy to understand why the 2 of them were together. After all, they were both teaching at the University of Misty. For example, they had acted together during the Plant Planet incident. Just nice. If Bop was here, he might be able to find an opportunity to ask him what his standard corpse was. Eugenius made a decision. It just so happened that there was a problem in front of him that he could not decipher. Bop might be the most important person to solve the problem. Squeak, 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 the dark green tentacles that were scattered outside his body and emitted an extremely foul stench had all been retracted into his body. Eugenius also landed steadily in front of the 2 of them, as if he was already used to the human shell. First, he deliberately patted the dust on his shoulder where Han Dong had touched him. Then, he used 2 fingers to hold his dark green hair and tidied it up slightly. What are you going to do? Although Eugenius' question was facing Bop, it was still Han Dong who answered. According to the clues provided by the Void, we are looking for some hidden treasures. The treasures, ancient relics, equipment, and other rare items obtained during this period will be distributed according to our attributes. Before the dangerous event arrives, we will try our best to increase our strength. Are you interested in joining us? Clues from the Void. Eugenius looked at Bop with a skeptical gaze. The latter also nodded slightly to confirm this matter. If that was the case, he had no reason to refuse. It was different from other origin substances. Eugenius had no background, no old king to support him, and no resources for him to use. He was the ruler of the Shugus clan. If one were to talk about taking care of him, it was the existence in the void who had compressed the black mountain of flesh for him and officially liberated the Shugus clan through the London game. In his opinion, if he could not even reach the king level, there was no need to talk about developing his clan. Hence, he had always been in the state of adventuring alone. As long as there was a chance for him to grow, he would not miss it. Not only did he need to learn corpse-eating cult's rights, he also needed to improve in other areas. However, Eugenius didn't immediately agree. He stared at Bop and continued asking, "Why did you invite me? Shouldn't you have a better choice?" Even if you don't get along with Green, there are also Aslan, Sally, Helen, and Hyde who seem to be better options. My relationship with Nicholas isn't that good. I almost killed him back then. Bop was like a dummy as Han Dong continued to answer this question. That's because we have cooperated before. That is, we had the experience of exploring the broken dimensions. Although we were forced to cooperate under the intervention of Professor Morgan, the overall effect was very good. This time, we will once again set foot in the shattered dimension and search for the ancient ruins drifting outside the world. At this point, Han Dong pointed at his glabella. In addition, if Eugenius' eyes and mine can be matched, the probability of finding the treasure ruins will be higher. After listening to this explanation, Eugenius still looked at Bop. After getting the latter's nod of affirmation, he agreed. However, I'm dealing with something in Serene City. I need to finish it before I can leave with you. What is it? According to the corpse-eating cult's rights, I need to collect 9 corpses that meet the criteria. Serene City, which gathers corpses, is an excellent place to screen the corpses. However, I haven't made any progress so far. The corpses in this corpse repository are all unqualified. Han Dong asked, "What criteria do they meet?" There are no superfluous descriptions in the demonic book, nor are there any illustrations to analyze. However, the demonic book itself can be used as a detection device. If the corpse meets the criteria, it will sense it. This directly aroused Han Dong's curiosity. There are no hints? That's a little strange. Can I take a look at this page? Although showing Han Dong only one page wouldn't reveal anything, and no genius could learn the entire book by reading the middle page, the corpse-eating cult's rights was something that Eugenius treasured the most. He deliberately took a step back. Han Dong shrugged and revealed a strange smile. "Eugenius, since we're already teammates, I won't get pregnant just by looking at this thing. Besides, looking directly at someone else's demonic book will also put me in danger. I just want to help you. After resolving this matter, we'll quickly embark on our journey." Bop also spoke at this moment. "I asked you to find a corpse that meets the criteria, but I didn't say what the criteria are. It's indeed a little strange that it's so vague. My revelation of Grachi doesn't have such a vague description. Take it out and let's take a look. Maybe we can find something else." "All right, I'll try my best to suppress the demonic book, but don't look at it for too long." When a demonic book that looked like it was sewn together from the flesh of a monster and had a mouth on its surface was taken out, Han Dong and Bop both felt like they were being gnawed on. There were even teeth marks of different sizes on their skin. The front page of the corpse-eating cult's rights, Part 2, Corpse Record. It displayed ancient words made of twisted green liquid. Before reading this volume, please collect 9 corpses that meet the criteria. The subsequent content will be generated after the collection is completed. The longer one looked at it, the more twisted the ancient words became. The lines that formed the words would even turn into mouths. A tongue would extend out from the inside to lick the reader's eyeballs. It could sweep away and swallow the eyeballs at any time. At this moment, Han Dong and Bop showed completely different states. Bop closed his eyes. He had already transformed these ancient words into astral states in his mind. Through mental simulation, he quickly screened and reconstructed the words. Han Dong's method was rather crude. He wasn't afraid of the backlash from the demonic book at all. Instead, he pressed his eyes closer. Under the gaze of the true demonic eye, the words on the pages didn't dare to move at all. Even the act of licking the eyeballs was restrained. It was also completely relying on the demonic eye that Han Dong could quickly understand the true meaning of these ancient words. Time passed little by little, and Bop's head overflowed with some astral sweat. When it dripped down, it was like a meteor streaking across the sky. Dong's true demonic eye was also a little sore, but he still maintained the analysis. Eugenius watched all of this silently. Got it. After an unknown period of time, Dong and Bop got the answer almost at the same time. Nicholas, you go first. If there are any problems, I'll correct them. Okay. The criteria is hidden between the characters. Reassemble the side radicals of these ancient words, and you will get an important clue. The criteria is neither the type nor the level, and it doesn't have to be special. It's the age. Eugenius, what you need are 9 old corpses. They must be from the ancient times, or even earlier. It just so happens that on this expedition, we will come across some ancient ruins. Maybe we can find some suitable corpses for you. Bop didn't add anything. He got almost the same answer. At this moment, all of a sudden, the number 39 morgue became restless. Sounds came from tens of thousands of mortuary cabinets. Heads and arms slowly stretched out from the mortuary cabinets. It seemed that because of the short exposure of the corpse-eating cult ritual, all the dead people were resurrected, and they also had a strong desire to devour all living things. Before things became troublesome, the 3 of them directly teleported away. Chapter 1839. Book of the Dead. According to the knowledge that Dong learned from the pre-volume and the clues provided by Teacher Yu, he had basically figured out the volume system of the first demonic book. Based on the body structure of the first generation of humans, it was divided into volumes by body parts. Apart from the pre-volume, it was mainly divided into 3 large volumes: head volume, body volume, and limb volume. It was further divided into 3 volumes. The head volume was divided into 3 parts: the eyes, the skull, and the brain. The body volume was divided into the body. The internal organs and the heart, which was taken out separately, were also 3 parts. The limbs were divided into the hands, feet, and bones, which were also 3 parts. From the looks of it, Dong's current learning progress was 19, and there were still 8 parts of the remnant pages that needed to be searched and deeply learned, and the difficulty of learning was definitely not lower than the eyes. After all, Dong's eyes were based on the copy. Among them, the skull, brain, internal organs, heart, and bones, these 5 parts that leaned towards the inside, were listed as dangerous parts. After the discussion of the old kings, they were not suppressed or sealed, but directly dismantled and thrown into the shattered dimension. The eyes, the body, the hands, and the legs, these 4 parts that leaned towards the outside, were evaluated as relatively less dangerous. Considering the high value of the Book of the Dead itself, the superiors sealed it in the country and suppressed it with the land deed. Among them, the eyes that Dong had already obtained were suppressed in Gray National Shalnos. As for the body, according to the clues provided by the Void, the body was located in the deep sea. The deep sea here was not literal. It was neither the ocean on Earth nor an ocean planet, but the name of a country. Its nature was similar to Shalnos. However, the deep sea was not as mysterious as Shalnos. S01, any water area that was defined as an ocean, had an entrance to the deep sea. A submarine suddenly disappeared during its voyage. Perhaps it accidentally arrived at the deep sea through the teleportation channel between the oceans. Even a big pineapple at the bottom of the sea could be a teleportation door to the deep sea. Because Dong was a deep-sea messenger, and because of the close relationship between Bop and Hyde, a trip to the deep sea should be the simplest journey. As for the hands, the clues recorded the depths of the dreamland. Due to the uniqueness of the dreamlands as a sanctuary and the existence of an existence similar to Teacher Yu in some ways, the dreamlands was a sanctuary. Even the Void could not penetrate into the depths of dreamlands. He needed Dong and the others to head to the dreamlands to search for answers. At that time, he could also head to the witch's home there and ask the 6th origin, Helen, for help. Furthermore, the Bufo that Dong was familiar with had a deep connection to dreamlands as well. In the end, The information related to the broken leg page was more interesting. According to the records, it was kept in the Black Forest under the control of the Goat Mother. Later, due to the cataclysm, the Goat Mother was severely injured, and the Black Forest could no longer exist independently. The leg fragments could only be temporarily transferred. However, at that time, most of the people in power were unwilling to take on this difficult task. Not only would it introduce unstable factors to his own world, but would also require a huge amount of financial, material, and attention to suppress and guard. Once there was a problem, it would cause the entire country to fall into a crisis. In the end, a special old king took over this mess. When Han Dong browsed through this information, his eyes widened with an expression of disbelief. He directly read out the important information recorded in the file. The follow-up work of sealing the leg fragments, after discussion, was handed over to the Yellow-Robed King and sealed in Soul Kingdom, Carcosa. It was him. Speaking of the Yellow-Robed King, Han Dong had contact with him in the early days, and the first time they met at the London game. After that, they had little contact. Compared to the old king, the Yellow-Robed King was independent and strange. Like the Grey Walker, he was biased and even close to humans, but his actual performance was even more. The Yellow-Robed King often appeared in the Holy City, hoping to borrow human writers to create related literary works for him. When he was in contact with humans, he did not have the attitude of a superior at all. It was as if he was obsessed with literary creation and had no time to care about other things. Who would have thought that the leg fragments were in his hands? This is good. I can use this opportunity to contact this guy. The Yellow-Robed King has not contacted me for a few years. Maybe he's found more interesting humans in other human cities, or is writing a new script or novel. He browsed through the file as a whole. Han Dong was confident that he could get all these superficial pages in a short period of time, so he was not in a hurry. Since he had the help of Bop and Eugenius, the most important thing was to go to the Broken Dimensions and search for the internal pages that were scattered in it. During this period, he would definitely pass by some ancient ruins, and perhaps there would be unexpected gains. And on Eugenius' side, Han Dong did not directly tell him about the Book of Necromancy. He simply explained that it was an adventure. During this period, he needed to help him collect old corpses, which made Eugenius feel that he was not working for free. The action plan for the Book of Necromancy was sorted out. To put it simply, from the inside to the outside. Han Dong's ambition was not limited to the 50% reduction that Professor Eugenius had requested. He wanted to complete the Book of Necromancy as soon as possible before he lost control and exploded. Rumble. A strong tremor came from the back mountain of Midland University. All kinds of plants rose from the ground, and a giant sphere rose into the sky. Since the incident with the external plant celestial body, the plant planet that had been placed in the back mountain of Midland University for a long time finally welcomed its first activity. Han Dong, who was in the control room, set the coordinates of a star sector according to the guidance of the void clues. He directly jumped through a wormhole in the sky of Midland University. Planet integration. Similar to Professor Morgan's control method, the planet that had undergone precise integration was like a spherical spacecraft that could travel normally between the shattered dimensions. Bop was responsible for marking the route coordinates. Han Dong and Eugenius' eyes were observing the nearby situation as much as possible to foresee the arrival of danger in advance. Black Tower Control Headquarters, deep level, hundreds of C. Engineers were gathered in a certain area. Of course, they were all Mr. Morgan's students. Their main job was to ensure the stable operation of the Rubik's Cube. Since the third incarnation, the Phase Walker, was killed, Mr. Morgan could only use the fifth incarnation, the Shadow and the Rain, to maintain and monitor the situation in the deep level. At this moment, the Rubik's Cube suddenly shook. Hundreds of engineers immediately stabilized it to ensure that the space transmission from the other side of the Rubik's Cube was completed. Buzz. A strange, sharp-toothed crack tore open at the top of the Rubik's Cube when a black leather shoe stepped out. Mr. Morgan's incarnation also lowered his head slightly and asked softly, "Grand President, Did you find anything new in the broken dimensions? The mysterious person who walked out of the Rubik's Cube did not answer directly. Instead, he dragged something with one hand and threw it out directly. Boom! An ancient, decaying, and depraved temple fell directly into the area. It was immediately left idle by the engineers through the enchantment system. An old, magnetic voice that had the air of a commander traveled into his ears. S01 is indeed a good place. Due to being separated from the Black Tower for many years, the size of its broken dimension has reached an extremely large value. It is not comparable to other worlds at all. It can be used as a temporary hiding place after we leave the Black Tower. It is much more convenient than occupying a superworld. Moreover, there are many remnants of civilization from S01 inside. It can help us understand the special life form of the hybrid demons. It is also very necessary for our plan. Increase the development of S01's broken dimension. Let the incarnations of those guys go in and take a look. Chapter 1840. The Shattered Dimension. It could be simply understood as the gap between worlds. Due to the movement of matter, this gap would continue to expand with the passage of time. However, the thousands of worlds that were directly related to the existence of the Black Tower, because they had established a channel with the Black Tower, and the stability of the channel would be checked and maintained every year. It was as if with the Black Tower as the center point, a strong rope was pulled out to pull these worlds, so that the distance between them was always constant. Therefore, other than S01, the gap between the other worlds was very small. If one broke through the boundary membrane of these worlds and rapidly jumped between the shattered dimensions, they would soon reach the boundary membrane of another world. But S01 was different. Due to the long years of severing ties with the Black Tower, as the expansion continued, 01 had already pulled far away from the Black Tower and other worlds, and the gap was already thousands of times larger than other worlds. The scale of the shattered dimension was already unimaginably large, and there were also other elements in the shattered dimension here. In ancient times, when a special team formed by the highest will of the Black Tower went to 01 to annihilate the humans, they had no choice but to clash head-on with the Old Kings. This led to the occurrence of the World Catastrophe. The battle between the holders of the first letter and the Old Kings caused the boundary membrane of S01 to be torn apart in large amounts. The starfields near the tear were devastated, and the alien demon civilizations built between these star fields were sucked into the tear and wandered into the shattered dimension. According to common sense, these civilizations would inevitably be torn apart and annihilated. But there would always be accidents and coincidences. Just like the truth demon sword in Han Dong's hand, this kind of matter that should not exist might be constructed by various coincidences. These civilizations that should have died just like that. Some accidentally bumped into the remnant pages of the Book of the Dead during their wandering, or were attracted by some remnant pages and led to a special area that had been stabilized by the remnant pages. Some special chemical reaction had already occurred in the shattered dimensions. Some reactions had even been completed. Plant Planet, Core Laboratory, all the control related to the planet could be carried out here. Plant roots used for perception were connected to Bop's cerebral cortex, and Bop's starlight perception could be transmitted through the plants of the entire planet through the roots. Bop acted as a humanoid positioning device just like that, and its effects were probably 10 times more effective than the planet's own detectors. Eugenist was not stingy. After all, this also involved the search for old corpses. He directly took out the main eyeball and embedded it in the control panel. The surface of the eyeball was also connected to the core root, becoming the eye of the plant planet. It could immediately detect the remains of the ruins drifting in the broken dimensions. Since both of them were working so hard, Han Dong would be able to slack off. He pretended to monitor and manage the internal and external conditions of the planet, but in reality, he let Dr. Swollen be in charge of this work. He was in the file room that Teacher Yu had given him, carefully reading the clues that the void had given him. I can't completely understand the document with the coordinates of the fragments, so I've already tossed it to Pope. With him as the captain, there shouldn't be any problems in navigating the ship, and we'll definitely be able to reach the area where the missing page is suspected to be. However, teacher, you used void dynamics to calculate the drifting range of the remnant page. Due to the need to involve the dimensional parameters, there was already a huge error after so many years. The margin of error of each remnant page was 50 to 100 light years. Not only does it require a lot of time, but it also requires a certain amount of luck. Han Dong could only do his best to search. If he couldn't find it, he could only delay the processing. This kind of voyage took half a year in a flash. The plant planet had its own time system, and one could feel the normal flow of time inside. During this period, there was basically no harvest. The only harvest was that they found an old corpse in a small, island-shaped ruin. Its appearance was relatively strange. Its upper body was worm-like, and its lower body was similar to a human. Its fingers and toes had compound mouths for eating, and its body surface was covered with eggs. According to Pope science, this belonged to the ancient hybrid demon that had long been extinct, the previous life of the worm walker, ancient worm. The reason why this ancient worm's corpse could be perfectly preserved was because of its special identity when it was alive. He belonged to the patriarch, and before the catastrophe, he sealed himself in a high-purity crystal. When the corpse-eating cult ritual was pasted, it reflected a green light for the first time, indicating that it had passed the verification. At the same time, the ancient scholar, who was judged to be completely dead, regained his vitality. The worm's head actually moved on its own initiative, and the huge mouth began to shrink and expand evenly. Just as the ancient scholar was about to move, the corpse-eating cult ritual, a mouth opened on the corpse-eating cult ritual, cover and swallowed the ancient scholar who had just been revived into the book. A green dot of light also lit up in the book. If the 9 dots of light were completely lit up, the subsequent content of the second volume would be completely revealed. Eugene would touch the deeper content of the demonic book, the taboo knowledge that even the previous holder, M.O., didn't pry into. Because of this, Eugene also happily assisted in the voyage. There were even several times when his eyes were seriously bloodshot, but he still gritted his teeth and persevered. After a rough calculation, the time for Eugene and Han Dong's eyeballs to be on duty was about 5:1. Dimensional Voyage, Day 119. Nicholas, it's your turn. I have to rest for a while. After getting along with each other for more than 100 days, Eugene's tone towards Han Dong was no longer hostile. It was just a little cold. Han Dong, who was idling in the brain world, supervising the expansion project of the brain world, which was now in the final stage, slowly opened his eyes and was shocked by Eugene's appearance. Not to mention that his eyeballs were bloodshot. Eugene was in a state of cultivation, similar to a young man who had been fighting in an internet cafe for 3 days and 3 nights. His whole body felt empty. F***CK. Eugene, sleep a little more. Okay. Eugene didn't need a bed or anything. He curled up in the corner and fell asleep instantly. An extremely stinky saliva flowed out from the corner of his mouth, and a strong stench was released from the surface of his body. In just 3 seconds, it created the feeling of a dry toilet in summer. However, Han Dong and Bop had long been used to this atmosphere of working in the toilet. When a main route was connected to the true demonic eye, the plants on the surface of the planet immediately grew bean-sized eyes, which could clearly observe the situation in the broken dimensions. Just as Han Dong was about to work as usual. Huh? What's that? In a certain location in the broken dimension, there was actually a faint light that could only be read by the demonic eye and couldn't be captured by other visual fields. He immediately changed his course. When the plant planet got closer to the light, the detector sent out abnormal fluctuations in values. Huh? The space parameters are gradually stabilizing. There's actually a stable area in the broken dimensions with a certain set of rules. Although there's still a big difference compared to the normal world, it's too strange. Bob, can you explain? I don't know either. Let's go take a look. As the voyage progressed, a floating piece of land gradually came into view. It was completely different from the dilapidated ruins they had passed through before. The size and specifications were also on a completely different level. The land in front of them was quite stable and seemed to have taken root in the broken dimensions. The light captured by the demonic, I came from here. Chapter 1841. As such a large piece of land came into view, Handong's face was filled with confusion. Even Bop, who was beside him, had the same expression. Bop's knowledge system covered almost the entire universe. Furthermore, due to the external plant celestial body incident, he was forced to enter the depths of the shattered dimension and even encountered anti-life substances. After the incident, Bop used various channels to collect books related to the shattered dimension and carried out a comprehensive knowledge replenishment. Because of this, Bop could accurately record the entire voyage route. According to the current exploration route, he even drew an extremely complicated dimensional map in his brain. Due to the chaotic nature of the shattered dimension, he had to rely on a large number of partial differential equations to correct it. Only then could he obtain the correct map at different times and locations. Among individuals of the same rank, there were not many who could do this. If he encountered an emergency and needed to retreat, he could follow the route he had already explored and escape in the safest and most efficient way. Bop's brain had always been operating very stably. Until now, the planets in Xing Chen's brain had all stopped operating, expressing his confusion about the situation before him. No matter how he thought about it, he could not understand why the various spatial parameters would become stable here. How is this possible? Our route is definitely not a problem. We have always been sailing towards the depths. The coefficient of spatial instability should be increasing. Currently, it has yet to reach its maximum value. In theory, it should not be decreasing. However, the various parameters of this region have actually stabilized to 0, 1, 0, 2 times of a normal world in just a few minutes. Under such environmental parameters, even if we do not follow the plant-based planet, we should be able to move freely in this region by ourselves. Is it possible that during our voyage, we accidentally got close to the boundary membrane, causing the space to become stable? Impossible. A short 100 days of sublight travel is not enough to traverse the shattered dimension. Furthermore, I am certain that our current location is in the depths and not at the boundary. There is a huge problem with this region. In the knowledge I have gathered, there has never been any mention of such a phenomenon. Hearing Bop's words, Han Dong revealed a smile. Since it involves the blind spot of Bop's knowledge, I can basically confirm one thing. Looks like we have really hit the jackpot. The light emitted from this region can only be captured by my magic eye. Coupled with the fact that the space is gradually stabilizing and the situation that you are unable to explain, this is enough to prove one thing. This is not a region where the shattered dimension should exist, but an accidental region that was created due to the influence of some substance. One of the pages of the Book of Necromancy is probably among them. Bop slowly nodded. That's the only explanation. It's very possible that the influence of the Book of Necromancy on this area is the cause of this anomaly. Furthermore, there might be other secrets hidden on this piece of land. There is bound to be a relatively complete, ancient ruin inside, and the Book of Undead would most likely cause all the corpses inside to come back to life and transform into extremely dangerous undead. They might even undergo anti-life changes under the influence of the environment, forming something even more dangerous. All right, let's take our time to explore. A continent-sized piece of land slowly appeared before their eyes. It was similar to an island floating in the universe. Upper surface smooth with soil structure. The most important feature was the ice layer. About 90% of the entire land was covered by a thick layer of ice. There were even supersized icebergs and glacial structures. A large number of ruins similar to bunkers were scattered all over the surface. Big or small, some are simple geometrical shapes like hemispheres or squares, which were about half the size of a football field. Some are in the shape of a whirlpool, like a snail shell, comparable to the size of a medium-sized city. In addition, near the center, there was a white stone tablet that was 1,000 meters tall. The light from the magic eye came from the thousands of crystal spheres embedded at the top of the stone tablet, which were similar to ancient crystallized eyeballs. Lower end, the lower part of this continent that was torn apart, huge pure white pillars were derived from the lower part, similar to the structure of bones or legs. It seemed to be able to stably take root in the dimensional space, and could even undergo an extremely slow dimensional migration. Bop looked at the ice layer and the structure of the building, and began to explain. These bunker-shaped ruins should have come from the ancient times, Vodas, which belonged to the ancestors of the wormy people. In the ancient times, this group of people also had another name, Ice Demon. In the end, the formation of the northern continent was inseparable from this race. In Aslan's body, there was a part of Voda's high-quality bloodline. However, compared to the wormy people, this group of people from the ancient times relied heavily on cold. They needed a temperature of minus 241 degrees Celsius or even lower to maintain their vitality. This bunker is a type of building that concentrates on cooling. Is it that cold? It is also because of this characteristic that this group of people can't possibly survive after being sucked into the broken dimension, not to mention the extreme environment between the broken dimensions. As long as the bunker's energy supply is cut off, they will die from the heat in a short period of time. However, the white obelisk in the center was not a ruin. It was built recently, and its purpose might be to attract other life forms drifting between the broken dimensions. To be able to complete this project, it means that there are survivors here, and there are quite a few of them. Nicholas, this plant planet should have a stealth function, right? Hurry up and open it. The moment I spied on the land, it was already opened. Since the stability of the space here is very high, why don't we stop the plant planet at a relatively safe distance, and then sneak in quietly? Yes, call Eugenus. There's no time to lose. The 119 days of dimensional roaming had caused Bop to feel dull and uninteresting. Such an interesting phenomenon appeared in front of him. His thirst for knowledge drove every cell in his body, and he was eager to step on this mysterious land that should have been extinct and broken, and explore the mysteries within. Ha! Unexpectedly, an arm gently landed on Bop's shoulder. Some kind of subtle laughter passed into his body, and instantly suppressed the impulse brought by his thirst for knowledge. Don't worry, Eugenus isn't in a good state. Let him have a good sleep. He's quite an important combat force. Okay. The two of them shifted their gazes to Eugenus in the corner. Just by sight, they could see an extremely disgusting stench. Due to excessive fatigue, Eugenus' physical system was undergoing efficient repair work, accompanied by a metabolism that was several times or even dozens of times faster. It wasn't just stinky saliva that flowed out of his mouth. Secretions produced by metabolism were being discharged from his ears, eyes, and nose. All the pores on his body were in an open state, and wisps of green mixed with yellow juice were squeezed out of his body as Eugenus breathed. If the planet wasn't equipped with an ultra-efficient recycling device, the entire planet might have been contaminated by him and turned into a super septic tank. While waiting for Eugenus to fall asleep, Han Dong still maintained his observation of the land, hoping to observe the life forms living on it and make preparations in advance. About 6 hours passed. What's that? Han Dong didn't see any living creatures on the surface of the planet. Unexpectedly, he discovered that a black spaceship with a completely different design style and material structure appeared from the other end of the broken dimension and slowly landed on the planet. There are other life forms exploring the broken dimensions, and they were attracted by the light emitted by the stone tablet. Chapter 1842. As the distance was too far, Bop's perception could not reach them. He could only use Han Dong's shared vision to observe the situation of the other mysterious team. The Shattered Dimension is not a place where ordinary people can enter. There are very few extreme existences like Professor Morgan. Most of the hybrid demons would not risk their lives to come here for a meaningless dimensional adventure. Even if there are very few who come in, the probability of meeting us is almost zero. Moreover, I have never seen the structure of this spaceship before. I'm also not sure what material it is made of. It's very strange. I suspect that they are not even creatures from our world. The only thing I can be sure of is that this group of people are not locals. They deliberately chose to dock the spaceship at the back of the land. They are also lurking in this area. Han Dong's face revealed a difficult expression. He wanted to see the appearance of this group of people clearly, but he was blocked by some kind of repulsive force. The only thing he could see was a group of humanoid shadows. Due to the interference of the shattered dimension, the effect of the magic eye will decrease every 1,000 meters. There is no way to see the appearance of this group of people clearly, but their overall appearance should be closer to that of humans. If I want to confirm the identity of this group of people, I am afraid that I will have to come into close contact with them. There are more and more strange things happening. Although Bob looked anxious on the surface, he was still very happy deep down. He had not experienced this kind of completely unknown situation for a long time. It even reminded Bob of the strange feeling of exploring the hybrid demon world for the first time when he first came out of the void. Furthermore, there was an additional 10% of danger here. Nicholas, you should also know that, except for special cases like us, if you want to explore the shattered dimension, you must be at least at the level of a king. Only the king's territory derived from the mythological scroll can maintain the stability of the rules within a certain range here and be able to move forward steadily. Even if this group of people are not all kings, at least one of them is in charge of leading. Once they meet, it is very likely that a conflict will break out. As long as they are not at the intermediate level, I have the confidence to deal with them. Not to mention, the two of you are still here. When Han Dong said this, Bob immediately looked over with his starry eyes. He only saw a confident and crazy smiling face without the slightest intention of bragging. Where does Nicholas's confidence come from? How much have you grown in this period of time? Just like that, after roughly figuring out the group's route of action, Han Dong and Bob also lay down on their own beds for a short rest. Han Dong had a very strange dream. He dreamed that he had eaten something bad and was looking for a place to go to the toilet. While squatting, he accidentally slipped and fell. Pa! The moment he fell into the cesspool, he immediately woke up. He saw the green-haired Eugenie standing in front of him. He asked curiously, "Why are you all asleep? Why did the spaceship stop too?" Although Eugenius had absorbed all the secretions from his body and looked brand new through the self-purification system, his body was still emitting a strong smell. After Han Dong briefly explained what had happened to him, Eugenius immediately became serious. There must be more than one old corpse on such a huge and mysterious continent. The plant planet hovered at a relatively safe distance and turned on its anti-detection mode and stealth mode. Puff, puff, puff. 3 spore-like plant cabins shot out from the surface of the planet and aimed at the back of frozen land. When they were about 30 kilometers away, there was even a feeling of crossing the atmosphere. However, the surface of the spore body did not heat up or catch fire due to the high-speed friction in the air. Instead, a thick layer of ice formed. When they were about to land, soft tentacles grew from the bottom, giving them enough buffer space to land stably. The plant cabin that should have bloomed at the top was stuck because of the severe freeze. Buzz! Bop ignored the physical obstacles and stepped out of the cabin through the wall. Han Dong and Eugenius used a more violent method to destroy the cabin. It's so cold. There were very few areas in the S01 world that were so cold. Such an extremely low temperature was not as simple as freezing. Even the most basic movement of matter would be limited. Each of them used different abilities to resist the extreme cold. Han Dong used the camouflage polar circle life form to grow white hair all over his body. The black vortex on the surface of his body was also spinning rapidly, allowing his body to adapt to the extreme cold as much as possible. It looked like he was wearing an extremely thick and furry polar bear coat. Bob did not change much. He just built a kind of void barrier on the surface of his body, isolating the extreme cold from the outside in advance. He was not affected at all. Eugenius used the body transformation of the Shugas to compress his body to only about 1 meters, and even his appearance was that of a junior high school student. By compressing his body size, he reduced the consumption of heat. At the same time, he took out a black flesh robe made from the raw material of the black flesh mountain from his body, wrapped his body, and put on a hood. The black skin on the surface could effectively resist the cold, and the meat inside could also transmit the appropriate temperature. As the landing position was at the lower, and they could also clearly see the legs growing at the lower end of this land. It was indeed a kind of giant pillar made of bone material, emitting a strong, stable energy and taking root in the void. Bop was also sure that this bone-like structure had nothing to do with the Voda's race and was not a product of their technology. Han Dong also made a guess because of this. Could it be that the remnant page that exists here is the bone part of the Book of the Dead? When Han Dong observed these bone-like pillars, Bop had already drawn an extremely stable teleportation array. Whoosh! Everyone was directly teleported to the land area. The biting cold wind whistled unceasingly. If an ordinary person were to stay here, they would be completely frozen to death within 2 seconds and then thrown into the deep dimension by the cold wind. Han Dong used various methods to take root in the ground and, at the same time, spread out his perception to confirm that there was no individual existence within a radius of 5 kilometers. Less than a kilometer away, there happened to be a small oblate bunker. Eugenius could not wait to enter. Perhaps a qualified ancient corpse was preserved inside. Let's go. Let's find out what kind of creatures live here. I'll walk in front. Eugenius, you follow behind me and use your eyes to help me observe. Bop, you stay at the back. Once there's a problem, immediately bring us away. We have not made any effective risk assessment yet, so we must be decisive in our retreat. Don't worry. When Bop was at the back, both Han Dong and Eugenius were completely at ease. They no longer had any misgivings and headed towards the bunker. The temperature inside is actually higher than outside. Has the energy supply been cut off? When they stepped into the bunker, the temperature had risen by about 20 degrees, and the whistling cold wind had stopped. Han Dong actually had the illusion that it was warmer. There was a large circular passage inside, and it felt like they were walking in a cave. Han Dong had already worn the truth demonic sword at his waist. Eugenius also took out the stone coffin with the spear sealed in it and carried it on his back. What a dense internal structure. Is this a group dormitory? On both sides of the passage, there were small rooms for living. It should be similar to a student dormitory. It was a small room of 10 square meters and could accommodate 18 people. The passage was very narrow. However, these beds were empty and there was not a single corpse. Just as everyone was observing the structure of the rooms, trying to search for clues that might be left behind, Han Dong and Eugenius' eyes caught something at the same time, and they looked towards the depths of the passage. Buzz! Han Dong raised his left arm, and a death shot was shot out. Eugenius did the same, and a green ray of light shot out from his right index finger. However, there was no response from the 2 attacks, and the target had been lost. Eugenius, what did you just see? A faintly discernible skull, and its eye sockets seemed to be emitting blue light. That's right. I also saw a skull. It's very strange. Even if our attack did not hit, it should have hit the walls of the bunker and made a sound. But now, there is no feedback. Be careful and continue to go deeper. It is indeed related to the bones. Chapter 1843. Wait. Just as Han Dong and Eugenius were about to follow, Bop suddenly stopped them. Don't be in a hurry to follow. Although I don't sense what it is, the possibility of it being a lure is high. The most important thing is that it can absorb your attack rays, which is in line with the characteristics of undead. Undead? Why is there such a thing as undead here? Eugenius was confused. He didn't know the real purpose of this trip. He was only told to explore by Han Dong. Han Dong immediately explained, Ahem, Eugenius, you should have heard of it, right? As early as ancient times, after the Book of the Dead was fixed as taboo knowledge that hindered the development of the world, a large part of it was torn up and thrown into the shattered dimension. The reason why this area is so stable is because Bob and I speculated that it was the influence of the remnant pages of the Book of the Dead that could form such a stable area in a shattered dimension. Weren't you sleeping before? I didn't tell you in detail. Since you speculated that this place was affected by the remnant pages, why? Eugenius was stunned halfway through his words. He obviously figured it out. From the beginning, the purpose of your expedition was for the Book of the Dead. The guidance of the void was just an excuse. I didn't understand such a simple thing at first. Perhaps it was because looking for the corpse gave Eugenius a headache, but now he realized that he was actually working for Han Dong. Mutual benefit. Aren't we also helping you look for old corpses? Corpses affected by the Book of the Dead might be more suitable, and an area like this that is affected by the Book of the Dead is more stable, and the preserved ancient relics are more complete. When the time comes, the relics obtained will mainly be divided between you and Bob. Eugenius had already obtained a corpse and was tricked into such a deep position. Of course, he didn't want to give up. Pa. Bob gently patted Eugenius' back, and a void whisper went straight to his brain. Eugenius, the reason why we came to you was largely because of the teacher's request. Just like your previous question, we actually have other candidates. Aslan can completely replace your current position. Teacher has always been concerned about the development of the Shuga's clan and your situation. His words were like a shot of strength that went straight into Eugenius' heart. His slightly fluctuating mood immediately calmed down. Let's have a seat in the cubicle first. I'll briefly explain undead. After all, this was a threat from a very long time ago. Along with the dismantling, suppression, and exile of the Book of Necromancy, this sort of danger no longer exists. All of you probably don't have a deep understanding of it. Everyone temporarily entered the old house between the bunkers. The extremely narrow space was crammed full of stone beds with upper, middle, and lower bunks. Bob set up a void barrier to completely seal off the entrance. You should have heard that the Book of the Dead Spirit was able to spread the concept of its existence throughout the universe. A large number of fiends were affected and instantly set off a journey to search for the book, even if he didn't touch the real thing. However, as they got closer and closer to the location of the real book, the thoughts of the mantis demons would be affected and changed. Some kind of forbidden secret technique would be gradually engraved in their minds and eventually activated, turning mantis demons into undead spirits. Even some of the old Wangdu would be affected and would privately search for the real book. Although most of the fiends affected were mythical fiends and below, it still took a lot of effort from the old kings to deal with this matter. This incident caused the development of the world to regress by nearly 100 years. The root of the difficulty was that these undead spirits transformed from fiends could be defined as perfect individuals. The most direct manifestation was that their appearance would gradually become closer to that of humans. In the process of being affected by the Book of the Dead Spirit, their various flaws, which couldn't be fixed through evolution and growth, were slowly being filled in. Not only did they have strength that surpassed those of the same level, but they also had immunity to all kinds of energy attacks. Simply put, they had the two characteristics of strong physique and magic immunity. Just like the Shuga's clan that the ancients spent a lot of effort to create, it integrated the strengths of a large number of fiends and erased some of their flaws. Thus, they were born with extra strength. Eugenius, you should know this feeling better than any of us. Just being affected by the book has such an effect. When the ancients created our clan, they didn't just spend thousands of years and a large amount of resources. They also paid a great price. Of course, it's not that simple. The changes brought about by the Book of the Dead Spirit have problems in themselves. The process of being affected and eventually transforming into undead spirits is actually a failed transformation. This group of fiends themselves couldn't withstand such perfection. Even if they were left alone, they would naturally die in a few days or no more than half a year. Back then, It was more difficult to completely kill the undead spirits that had infiltrated the entire universe. Therefore, Teacher directly joined forces with the superiors to control and disassemble the Book of the Dead Spirit to cut off this source of infection. It didn't take long for the undead spirits hiding in the universe to die out. Eugenius asked, somewhat puzzled. According to what you said, this frozen land has drifted in the broken dimensions for who knows how many years. Even if the guys here turn into undead spirits, they should have died long ago. They shouldn't have existed until now, right? There are indeed many individuals that died here. Otherwise, according to the density of the bunker, we would have encountered them as soon as we came in. I suspect that under the influence of the broken dimensions, a small portion of the undead spirits had undergone a deeper mutation that had never appeared before, forming a brand new species of undead spirits. Next, we may face a special life form that we have never seen before. Use physical attacks as much as possible. Once I feel that something is wrong, I will take you and evacuate. Okay. Eugenius nodded, his expression somewhat solemn. Han Dong didn't participate in the conversation the entire time. He just quietly pondered. He was the one who recognized and held part of the Book of the Dead Spirit. He knew better than anyone what Pope meant by perfect. The advanced scroll had already shown Han Dong the essence of this book. While learning different scrolls, he was slowly making up for his own shortcomings. They set off again. This time, Han Dong and Eugenius walked side by side in front. The surface of Eugenius' black flesh robe was also covered with eyes. The tentacles growing on his back were ready to draw weapons at any time. They walked along the passageway between the bunkers and finally circled to the central room. This should be the activity center. In the past, when the ice demons didn't need to leave the bunker for resource extraction, hunting, and so on, they should have concentrated their activities here. Now, there was only one person here, and he appeared to be in a very strange position. A skull with white hair was connected to the ceiling through joints similar to the cervical vertebrae. It could move freely. A female body that was as translucent as ice crystals was sitting cross-legged on the ground. It seemed that she was in the middle of some kind of meditation. The skull opened and closed. It emitted a soft, ancient mantis demon language. I've been waiting for you for a long time. It's been a long time since a living person came here. Come and sit. Han Dong motioned for the two to wait at the door. He walked forward alone. Chapter 1844. This woman's appearance was very strange. Her head, which was separated and hung from the ceiling, didn't have skin or muscles. It was just a skull with white hair. Her body, which was sitting on the ground, was quite complete. Her figure was basically the same as a human's. Her skin, which was as translucent as ice crystals, clearly displayed her internal structure. White crystal blood flowed through her blood vessels, and the surface of her organs was dotted with small diamond-like particles. Just as Bob had said, the hybrid demons that had been transformed by the undead would gradually resemble humans. I'll try to communicate with the other party. If the negotiation is unsuccessful, I'll consider killing or retreating. After Han Dong gave a signal, he walked forward alone. He used a true demon eye to spy. This woman's skin, flesh, and various internal organs would be filtered out, leaving only her skeleton. Han Dong couldn't help but think of the white-boned spirit in Journey to the West. However, the skeleton here had a deeper meaning. It was obviously related to the Book of the Dead, bone part. As he gradually approached, Han Dong also quietly released his domain. It was a pure, faceless domain that belonged to the concealment type without any appearance. He wanted to secretly test this undead. When the domain spread over, it didn't feel like it enveloped the other party. This thing must be a product of the Book of the Dead. The remnant page corresponds to the bone part. Not only is it immune to magic, but it can't even affect the domain. It's really difficult to deal with. Bob's speculation might be right. This thing is a special undead that was born in the shattered dimensions. Interesting. Since the domain that he spread out couldn't affect the other party, Han Dong retracted the domain and put it under his feet to strengthen himself. He sat down cross-legged 2 meters away. As soon as Han Dong sat down, the hanging skull opened its mouth and said, "Don't worry. You guys are really powerful. You can reach such a depth with just a mythical body. Moreover, from the looks of it, you don't seem to have suffered much along the way. When the planet we were on was swept in, a large number of our people died on the spot. Our companions who survived by chance also slowly died in endless despair. Only a few lucky ones like me survived." Han Dong had a respectful expression. He even lowered his head slightly and said, "We currently have the ability to move freely in the shattered dimensions. We currently possess a technology that allows us to move freely in the shattered dimensions. Our main purpose for venturing deep into this place is to find an opportunity to become a king." While traversing dimensions, he accidentally discovered a mysterious team and followed them here. They should have already landed on the other side of the frozen land. Han Dong shifted the focus of the conflict to the mysterious squad. "Oh, my friend is receiving them right now, and it seems like they don't get along very well. However, this isn't my problem. The only thing I have to do is to receive you. Is there anyone else?" "No, it's just the three of us." "Sigh, that's really little. There shouldn't be much bone marrow that the three mythical bodies can squeeze out in the end. I just hope that there will be more people landing there." He changed the topic. The seemingly friendly first interaction was broken in an instant, leaving no room for communication. Whoosh! The skull of the undead hanging at the top exhaled a breath of cold air. In a split second, the temperature continued to drop. It began to approach absolute zero, 273. 15 degrees Celsius. This was no longer as simple as extreme cold. It had seriously affected the basic movement of matter, and time was also limited. Time freeze. As the main target, Han Dong, who was the closest, was directly affected by the time freeze. His entire body did not react at all. As the main body of the cold air exhaled, the undead woman was completely unaffected by the cold. The moment the cold air was exhaled, her ice crystal arm also stretched out at the same time, poking Han Dong's face. She tried to freeze his head and turn him into an ice sculpture to deal with the other two. At the same time, Bop, who was at the door, had already made some small movements with his palm. He had already left a void mark on Han Dong's body. Just as he was about to drag Han Dong back, a voice sounded, "Watch my performance." Bop did not think too much about it. Since Han Dong wanted to operate, he would give him a chance. He directly cut off the void connection. Buzz. Energy visible to the naked eye had already condensed at the tip of the ice crystal finger. Just as it was about to touch Han Dong's forehead, Han Dong, who should have been imprisoned in the cold current of time, suddenly smiled. Ha! A cold and strange snicker crawled out of his throat. The laughter quickly crawled into the undead's head, and a scene of the end of the world appeared in front of her. The entire piece of frozen earth began to disintegrate, and the heads of the survivors all exploded like balloons. The formation of the doomsday scene caused her consciousness to also fall into a state of collapse. The undead woman was stunned on the spot. Taking advantage of such a gap, her mind moved. Whoosh! The truth demon sword, which had a turbulent sword body, unsheathed itself and directly cut her ice crystal body into two. The cut body was directly sucked into the singularity of the sword body and was completely annihilated. In addition, Han Dong deliberately did not attack the skull hanging in the air. The skull, which had been affected by the doomsday joke, was basically unable to do anything else and was in extreme pain. Cracks that symbolized disintegration appeared on the surface. In the extreme cold, Han Dong turned his head as if nothing had happened. Chapter 1845. Han Dong, wrapped in a furry white bear coat, walked at the front of the team. The Truth Demonic Sword, full name, Trendus's Lost Demonic Sword, Eraser of Truth. It floated beside him, occasionally changing its position automatically. The body of the sword would also tilt to different degrees, like shaking its head or adjusting its posture. No matter how the cold wind howled or how low the temperature was, the truth demonic sword was not affected by the cold. And with Han Dong's use during this period of time, the fluid on the surface of the sword had taken on a turbulent state, and at the same time, an aura that symbolized eternal death was entwined around it. Pope suddenly asked, "Nicholas, the other party is not affected by the domain and immune to magic. Your mental attack actually worked?" I wasn't sure if it would work at the time. My maniac laughter had a breakthrough not long ago, and I was planning to find a target to test its effects. This kind of undead that was born in the shattered dimensions could be considered an excellent experimental target. So I made a hypothesis. If it didn't work, I would shatter the target along with the skull. If it worked, I would preserve the skull for my use. I didn't expect it to really work. What's the current situation of the skull? It's still being eroded, and the progress is slower than expected. We'll wait until it's completely eroded before digging for information. Based on the current situation, the other team should be like us, advancing from the other side of the frozen earth. If they're strong enough, we should meet in the center of this frozen earth. Also, since this group of undead is absolutely hostile to us, we might as well kill our way through. Don't let go of any bunkers we encounter along the way. Not only can we weaken their combat strength, but we can also gather some information. If they send reinforcements, we'll consider changing our route. Anyway, with Pope here, I don't have to worry about this. Pope nodded in affirmation at Han Dong's inference. After the first contact, and the fact that Han Dong could kill the undead in one move, everyone was relatively more at ease. As they advanced towards the next bunker, Eugenius, wrapped in a black meat coat, took the initiative to step forward. Just the breath he exhaled added a different smell to this frozen earth. Let me try this time. While there aren't many undead, I can familiarize myself with them. All right, Han Dong stepped aside and let Eugenius be the first to step into the square bunker. He had wanted to see how Eugene had changed during this time. After all, in the previous incident, Eugenius could be considered a beneficiary. He had obtained S-arm, and his control of the demonic book had reached a deeper level. In terms of birth, Eugenius was known as the greatest biological masterpiece of the Ancient Ones, the most perfect hybrid demon race, and the most unique existence among the Shugas. In layman's terms, he could even be called the Prince of the Shugas. He was the only perfect Zugas who had passed through the depths of the mountain of flesh in his youth and been verified by the ancients. He had obtained another masterpiece left behind by the Ancient Ones, the thousand-colored evil eye. It had perfectly fused with Eugenius at the genetic level, becoming his main eyeball. In terms of talent, Eugenius was able to occupy the 5th place among the strongest 10 primordial substances in the last 100 years, or even the last 1,000 years without any support. Eugene had the chance to fight for the 4th place, but unfortunately, he met Aslan in the final round and lost. Now, Eugenius had won the London game and received the demonic book as a reward. He was indeed qualified to catch up and even confront Grimm head-on one day. Although the square bunker was different, the internal structure was almost the same. They gradually approached the center along the passage. This time, there were no skulls to welcome them. When they were close to the activity room of the bunker, crack, 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 a series of crisp sounds of friction entered everyone's ears. It sounded like someone was carving something, but it also sounded like someone was scraping bones. Eugenius, who was walking in the first place, had no intention of stopping. At this moment, Han Dong, who was walking behind him, reminded him softly, "There is no suitable level evaluation standard for the undead here. Individually, a regent can fully suppress the undead through the regent's domain and then use more special means to obliterate them. Since we haven't become a regent yet, the mythical domain doesn't work on these guys. In addition, they have magic immunity, so we can only kill them in close combat. The risk will greatly increase. Eugenius, try your best to kill them as soon as possible. The longer we delay, the more disadvantageous it will be." Eugenius didn't respond to Han Dong's well-intentioned reminder at all. When they arrived at the activity room in the center of the bunker, there was actually a door sign that read Bone Carver Bardgahan. Similarly, there was only one undead here. A stooped body wrapped in a brown robe sat in front of a stone table. The exposed, ice, crystal palm looked a little withered, and it should have been an old man when he was alive. Holding an exquisite bone knife in his hand, he was carving some kind of ice ball in front of the stone table, carving it into an exquisite skull shape. There were also ice sculptures in the form of bones scattered in the room, as if he was obsessed with bones. Just as Eugenius stepped through the door, some kind of cold connection had formed between him and the old undead. Eugenius' eyes also spied a kind of icy blue silk thread all over the room, connected to every part of his body. "You killed that woman, Frost Breath, so quickly. It seems that I have to deal with you young people seriously. It's really rare that a mythical body can reach this level." As he spoke, the bone carver with the bone knife scraped the air. Crack, crack, crack. The crisp sound of bones being scraped was heard. Plop. Eugenius knelt down on one knee. Han Dong, who was standing outside the door and observing, also had a troubled look on his face, because he had already spied that the scraping action just now had directly scraped away Eugenius' calf bone. At the same time, there were also ice crystal bone spurs left in the flesh, so that the leg was completely scrapped. Immediately after, there was another sound of bones being scraped. Eugenius' other leg was also scrapped, and he knelt on both knees. Okay, it's the arm next. Bone Scraper Bard continued to extend the knife, and as he scraped the bone like the previous 2 times, something strange happened. Crack! There was a sound of jamming, as if the bone was too hard and couldn't be scraped at all. It was also as if his knife was being bitten by a mouth. Eugenius, whose green hair hung down and covered most of his face, said in a contemptuous and hoarse voice, "Undead, is this all you've got? The king's arm can't be scraped." As soon as he finished speaking, Eugenius' right arm instantly swelled and distorted. Layers of rotten flesh and rubber stacked together, growing rapidly as if they were cancerous. An extremely terrifying corpse-eating mouth formed between the gaps of the flesh, constantly gnawing at the surrounding space. The surface of the entire arm was also drawn with the corpse-eating dogma, taken from the original demonic book, showing a kind of integrity. Smack! He pinched the old man, sitting in the middle. This scene made Han Dong and Bop widen their eyes. The well-read Bop also saw the problem in this. He even had a sense of crisis that Eugenius might catch up to him. This should be the high-level secret technique recorded in the corpse-eating cult's ritual, raw food processing. I didn't expect Eugenius to have already learned this technique. By eating him, as arm raw, the corpse-eating cult in the body perfectly absorbs, recasts, and edifies it. On the basis of retaining the arm's original attributes, he obtains a more perfect and more suitable arm for his own use. The bone sculptor, who was pinched, didn't have time to scrape the bone or make other escape movements. The Ghoul King's palm had already begun to compress physically, and the mouth stacked between the palms were also devouring at the same time. When the palm was completely squeezed, the bone sculptor was also completely eaten. Burp! Eugenius let out a fetid and extremely cold burp. He reached out and pulled out a skull stained with yellow gastric juice from the depths of his throat and threw it to Han Dong. I didn't devour the consciousness, so it should still be usable. Chapter 1846. Smack! When Han Dong caught the stinky old man's skull, a ball of mucus splashed out from the skull. Han Dong wasn't in a hurry to let the crazy laughter invade. The bone sculptor's consciousness had basically fainted from the stench. Of course, the skull was still shrouded in a layer of direct fear of being eaten alive, so there was no need to worry at all. Wow, Eugenius, can you clean it up before handing it to me? When Han Dong made this request, Eugenius directly stuck out his dark green tongue and licked the surface of the skull. Then he drilled into the nasal cavity and sucked the inside clean. It did look as bright as new, but the smell became stronger. After all, it was an important clue prop. Han Dong still put it in the archive room and slowly invaded it with his mind. Of course, while shocked by Eugenius' wonderful battle, Han Dong was also thinking about a problem. This group of undead clearly has a consciousness network and can communicate with each other. Otherwise, the first woman to be killed wouldn't have known that a similar conflict was happening on the other side of the frozen ground. Not only did this group of undead not send a large force to encircle and annihilate us, but they also deliberately left one person behind in each bunker, as if they were deliberately letting us defeat them one by one. Are they trying to lead us to the center in this way? Or are they trying to collect information from us by fighting us with a single undead? Pope seemed to be thinking about a similar question. After looking at each other, the two continued to the next bunker. Since Han Dong and Eugenius had already shown their skills, it was Pope's turn next. They were also very curious. Would a hybrid demon like Pope, who focused on spatial magic, use such physical means to defeat his opponent? Would he take out the void lightsaber that he had used in the Ladybug game? The actual situation was beyond their expectations. The undead with a huge head hadn't even finished his opening speech. As Pope raised his hand, a spatial cube visible to the naked eye had already enveloped the undead's body. Atomic decomposition, using pure physical means to disassemble it into microscopic units, leaving only the skull. Just as the other party was about to reconstruct its body with ice crystals, Han Dong's laughter came at the same time, completing the collection of the third head. Pope gave the battle conclusion with a serious face. Although these undead can live for a long time, their strength isn't that great. They should be the most basic undead units in this frozen land. The purpose of the individual existence in the bunker is most likely to verify, test, and tempt us. Using the least amount of resources to verify the information of the invaders was not a loss at all. Nicholas, how is your invasion going? The first skull is almost done. Basically, the enslavement is complete. Anyone can ask questions. Pop, why don't you go and ask? I don't know anything about this ancient race, so I might miss some important points when they talk about it later. Yes. Bop nodded, turned into starlight particles, and directly entered the void meatball in Han Dong's hand. In the internal archive room, the three skulls were placed neatly on a separate shelf. The first skull was that of a woman with white hair, and it had the appearance of a clown. The red smiley face had been smeared evenly along the sides of his mouth. There were even balloons squeezed between the eye sockets, similar to eyeballs squeezing out of the eye sockets. The strangest thing was that Bop could even faintly hear a kind of laughter. The situation of the other two skulls was similar. A strange balloon had been stuffed between their cranial cavities. When the balloon was full, it was the time when their minds completely fell. Nicholas, this guy's crazy nature. I'm afraid you won't be able to find a second example in the center of chaos. It's no wonder Grimm is so attentive. He can even enslave the consciousness of the undead. What a terrifying ability. Fortunately, this guy isn't our enemy. In Bop's eyes, the scene in the archive room was even stranger than the frozen land. When he asked questions, the skulls would let out a burst of laughter and answer honestly. However, as Bop expected, these undead belonged to the basic units. When it came to deeper questions, it didn't know anything at all. However, Bop still managed to dig out some more crucial information. This group of Voda's ice demons from ancient times were indeed affected by the Book of Necromancy, True Bone Book, and underwent the undead transformation. However, they didn't know any information about the Book of Necromancy and its storage location. They would go through a systematic transformation process. With the completion of the undead transformation, they would not rely too much on the extreme cold and would be more inclined towards the development of the bone. The stronger and purer the undead, the higher the bone attribute and purity. Because of this, these bunkers that were once used for collective cooling were all abandoned. They could already move normally in higher temperatures. Some of the undead with a low conversion rate and still focused on the extreme cold belonged to the lower category. They were excluded and left to guard the bunkers alone as reconnaissance units on the surface. If they could kill outsiders and bring enough fresh bone marrow to the temple, they may be specially granted the right to live in the temple. This was also why when they saw Han Dong and the others, There was no room for negotiation, and a conflict broke out immediately. With the bunkers abandoned, this group of Voda's ice demons that had completed the transformation built a temple that was more suitable for the undead transformation. It was located at the bottom of the white stone tablet that emitted a unique light that attracted outsiders. However, there was no way to know the specific situation of the temple. After all, these guys with a low conversion rate were not qualified to enter at all. Conversion rate. It seems that they have developed a more stable undead system. There may even be mantis who have mastered the remnant pages of the undead. It is too dangerous for just the three of us to go deep into the temple's lair. Since there's another team going deep, let them go in first. If this group of people has the ability to mess up the temple, the opportunity will naturally come. Buzz. When Bop came out from the meat bubble, Han Dong and Eugenus had just killed an undead. There's no need to go in one by one. As Bop explained the situation clearly, Han Dong also agreed with this point of view. It was indeed a good idea to let the other team scout the path ahead. The only thing that Han Dong cared about was the identity of this team and why they were here. Since we want to let them go in first, we might as well rest here. Anyway, they have already abandoned the bunker. It is still relatively warm inside, minus 190 degrees Celsius, compared to outside, and it is also equipped with a collective bedroom. Okay, using this unexpected leisure time, the three of them squeezed into the small bedroom and sat around the lower bunk. Since they had already slept enough in the spaceship, everyone could only sit and chat like this. Regarding the current situation, Bob had already analyzed it thoroughly. There was nothing much to say. The topic then turned to Han Dong and talked about the secret information that Han Dong had shown to Mr. Eugenus in the void. Bob had always wanted to find an opportunity to understand this matter. What on earth could make his teacher so interested? Just like that, Han Dong began to talk about his visit to the Black Tower's headquarters with Sally and the leaderless brother. He first explained the exquisite design of the headquarters building, then explained the details from the superficial to the deep. Bob's eyes lit up as he listened to this part, and he had a strong desire to visit as well. When it came to the situation of the original out-of-control version, such as the deepest house and the heavyweight, Mr. Teacher, even Eugenus, who pretended not to care, sat up straight and listened very seriously. He was even excited that this group of strange rampagers might invade S-01. He smelled an opportunity for war, an opportunity that could allow the Shugas to gain greater benefits and status. Chapter 1847. On the other side of the frozen ground, the advanced engineering team from the General Administration of Control was basically the same as the original idea of Han Dong and the others. They also searched every bunker along the way and defeated the undead between different bunkers one by one. Of course, they didn't know the concept of undead. It was by defeating them one by one that they slowly understood this kind of species. The relevant information had been comprehensively analyzed and recorded by the leading staff. Due to the exploration information brought back by the Grand President, the Avatar, whose original body was sealed in the deepest layer like Mr. Teacher and could only be released after completely seizing control of BBC. The committee officially decided to set the Shattered Dimension S-01 as a temporary stronghold for the Rampagers after they left the Black Tower. Using the Rubik's Cube as a stable transmission medium, a stable channel from the deeper layer of BBC to the Shattered Dimension S-01 was opened. They began to use a large amount of manpower to carry out a comprehensive exploration of this open and mysterious dimensional area. The engineers inside BBC combined with the precious materials provided by the Rampagers to create a spacecraft that could travel long distances in the Shattered Dimension. Including the avatar of the Grand President, the committee members took out avatars that were not responsible for the core matters and were relatively free to participate in this advanced exploration. The advanced engineering team that boarded the frozen ground was led by two originals. One of the avatars belonged to the committee members. The other was the original who failed to be selected by the committee, but was equally powerful. It was similar to the deep house that once accepted Han Dong and the others in the Black Tower and was responsible for the Q&A session. They were moving through the frozen ground in tandem. A lone bank employee was exploring the way in front. The latter, Matchstick Man, was responsible for ensuring the safety of 10 engineers and researchers. Containment name: bank employee number: original, 146, out of control type. Ordinary person, human, out of control level. Prince Jack, containment measures: original, 146 is prohibited from contacting any currency with numerical denominations such as coins and banknotes. If the above conditions are met, original, 146 is allowed to have a rest room equivalent to that of the Black Tower's employees. The management needs to meet any needs as much as possible. When large-scale data processing is required, original, 146 can be requested to provide computing assistance. Description: original, 146 is a normal human male wearing a white shirt, gray trousers, and leather shoes. His appearance is between 30 and 35 years old. His height and body shape are average. His life occupation is a bank clerk. He came from a large world L278, extinct. The supervision and maintenance cycle of a large world was usually 3 to 5 days after normal maintenance work. There was only a gap of 4 days. A total of 80% of the creatures in this world, including all the mythical bodies and true kings, 6 of them, had died. The Black Tower immediately activated the Special Investigations Department to conduct a comprehensive inspection of the L278 world in an attempt to find the intruder who had sneaked into this world. However, there were no intruders at all. The mass extinction of this world, as well as the fall of experts, came from within the world. After layers of investigation, they finally locked onto a bank in an ordinary town. A certain ordinary bank employee was a major suspect. The subsequent arrest of the bank employees went exceptionally smoothly. When the special investigation team broke into his home, the bank employee seemed to have expected that he would be taken away and was already packing his luggage. He only made one request, which was to bring his daily clothes and daily necessities. Otherwise, he would resist at all costs. After the person in charge confirmed that there was no problem with his luggage, he accepted the request. After testing, the bank employee had reached the out-of-control standard and was given the number original, 146. When the General Control Department's Mental Assessment Department asked him why he wanted to destroy the world, his answer was recorded by a recording device. The recording was as follows: I really couldn't stand the working environment at the time, and I felt despair and disgust towards the world. What exactly happened? Can you tell me in detail? I was an employee of Miller Bank. I worked diligently for 12 years. I didn't have a day off. I would complete the work on time every day. I didn't mind working overtime at all. Even if I did this, Manager Sharif would find various reasons to target and exclude me every day. He would often nitpick on normal work and deduct my salary. There were also my colleagues Angela and Steed. They would always find trouble with me over small matters. For example, they would pretend to accidentally pour coffee on me or my desk. They even pretended to take the wrong document and put the document I worked so hard on into the shredder. However, I could accept all of this because I love my job at the bank very much. Every coin I touch makes me excited. Not long ago, I was called to Manager Sharif's office. Angela and Steed were also there. They deliberately fabricated some things that didn't happen. They dismissed me on the grounds that I lacked the ability to do my job and damaged the bank's image. At that moment, I felt an unprecedented sense of disgust towards the world. I killed the 3 of them. When the bank security personnel arrived at the scene, they tried to make a move on me, but I also killed them. Later, the local police, state police, and military were alerted. After I killed all of them, a group of people dressed strangely with abilities arrived. I also killed all of them. This continued for 3 days, and the world finally quieted down. I also returned home to reflect on my actions and waited for you to come. Excuse me, can you provide me with a job similar to that of a bank clerk? I'm willing even if I don't get paid. I'll work hard and save you a lot of trouble. The above was the bank clerk's information in BBC's shelter. His various evaluations had reached the safe value. He was repeatedly evaluated as the safest shelter by BBC. As for the other, Matchstick Man, he was a special incarnation of a committee member. There was no information available for the time being. Mr. Matchstick, I don't think it's necessary to clean up the bunkers along the way. The information we can collect from these low-level units has reached the limit. Continuing to collect will only leak more information. While the bank clerk gave the suggestion, he also turned his head to look behind him. The 10-person team of engineers and researchers walked closely together. Everyone held a match in their hand. Even if they didn't light it, it could still help them resist the extreme cold. The Matchstick Man stayed at the back of the team. His image was similar to the Razor Gang, a gang that was derived from the completion of the Industrial Revolution in Britain. Overcoats, suits, pocket watches, leather shoes, newsboy hats, and leather gloves. Under the solemn yet elegant attire was a thin, middle-aged man with deep eye sockets. No matter when and where, he could always take out a box of exquisite matches from his coat pocket. When the bank clerk asked this question, the Matchstick Man also took out a cigar and lit it for himself. He blew out a smoke ring and nodded slightly. Well, let's speed up and get closer to the center. They came to the center of the frozen ground, when the white obelisk with the effect of a lighthouse stood at the location. Click! He slid a match with one hand and let it fall freely to the ground. Logically speaking, once such a weak match touched the ice and snow ground, it would be extinguished in an instant. However, the free-falling match continued to burn. Any material within half a meter, whether it was snow, ice, solid rock, or steel, would be instantly burned to ashes. Under everyone's feet, a bottomless black hole was burned out just like that. It seemed to be able to reach the temple lair of the undead. Chapter 1848. Outer Bunker. Inside a crowded compartment. Han Dong sat in the middle of the lower bunk near the door. The story about C was coming to an end. Bob sat on the edge of the bed. With one hand on the railing and the other on the bed, he stared at Han Dong, who was telling the story. Even in his mind, following the details of the story, he constructed corresponding images of the interior of the headquarters. Due to the small size of the bed, Eugenist didn't have many places to sit. He could only hang upside down on the middle bunk and listen to Han Dong's story in a suspended state. Both Bop and Eugenist showed a rare state of single-mindedness. It was the first time they had heard of such a strange rampager and the design of the headquarters that supervised and controlled them. The rampagers who formed the committee are all superior existences. Eugenist showed a shocked expression. He didn't expect so many superior existences to be locked up in a building. Superior was not something he could reach. The gap between them was simply impossible to cross. Even Bop showed a surprised expression. No wonder Teacher is so concerned about this matter. If these guys really invade, it will be difficult to deal with them. Moreover, according to Han Dong's description, these rampagers should be very smart. They will never invade us directly. Instead, they will first cleanse, assimilate, plunder resources, and even completely enslave other worlds. They will only find trouble with us when they have enough strength. If we can stop them in advance, it will save us a lot of trouble. Teacher Eugenist should be advocating special cooperation with Black Tower. I also hope to stop these guys in advance. Bop said with a serious face. Teacher will definitely guide us in the right direction. It's about time. Let's go. Just as the three of them withdrew from the compartment and walked a few steps out of the bunker. First, a strong flame from the center of the frozen earth was caught by their eyes. Then, boom, a violent explosion resounded throughout the frozen earth. Ka, ka, ka. The explosion seemed to come from underground, causing a large-scale earthquake. At the same time, it tore open a series of exaggerated giant cracks that spread from the center to the surroundings. However, these cracks only existed on the surface and didn't touch the foundation of the continent. The most terrifying thing was that there was a heat wave that could suppress the extreme cold spreading together. Hide inside first. Everyone immediately returned to the bunker. A few seconds later, The wave-like flames overflowed from the entrance of the bunker and continued to spread towards the permafrost boundary. The overall temperature was probably tens of thousands of degrees Celsius. If everyone were to stay outside and directly endure such a heat wave, they would need to expend a lot of energy to resist. Han Dong's brows furrowed as he watched the heat wave. He can ignite the frozen continent all by himself? It must be at the king level and not a low one at that. Bop replied softly, "They're indeed very strong, but it is also within our expectations. A small team that can explore a shattered dimension must have extremely strong strength. At the very least, they didn't know of our existence. As planned, we follow behind them. If we can confirm that the other party's level is in middle, I'll immediately take you away." "All right, we'll do as you say." He waited for the flames to finish spreading. The frozen land had undergone a fundamental change. The outer layer of ice had almost melted, revealing pieces of land that had been severely scorched, as well as some bone structures that grew within the earth. The reason why the continent, which should have been disintegrating and collapsing, could stably drift between dimensions was because of these complex and regular bone structures underground. The overall temperature had also returned from negative 200 degrees Celsius to the normal temperature line. With just one move bringing about such an effect, the three of them could basically guess that the other party's level was most likely middle. However, they were unwilling to leave just like that, especially Han Dong, who had already confirmed that the remnant pages of the Bone Division were here. Bop and Eugene also had their own thoughts. The exploration of the mysterious continent was one of them. They all wanted to see what kind of people were exploring the void. The white stone tablet that acted like a lighthouse had been completely destroyed by the explosion just now. A deep pit nearly 100 meters wide had been blasted out in the center of the continent. On both sides of the pit, broken and scorched bone structures could be clearly seen. If it weren't for the existence of these bone layers, such a fiery explosion just now might have directly destroyed the frozen land. To cause such a powerful explosion, this group of people should have had a fierce conflict with the undead in the temple. This explosion also directly connects the ground to the temple. Now is the best time for us to go deeper. But before we go down, we'd better disguise ourselves. Han Dong gently pinched the void meat bubble in his hand. 3 completely enslaved skulls were taken out. "Each of you pick one. I'll be responsible for disguising you." There was no need to pick. Whoever killed them would get to keep them. Eugene took the skull of the bone carver he killed. It was still emitting a strong stench even now. Bop took the skull of the big-headed undead. What was left for Han Dong was naturally the skull of a woman with white hair on the top of her head. It didn't matter. For Han Dong, gender was not a restriction at all. "Do you want to stay on my head like this?" Eugene took the skull and put it on his head, even squeezing his head out of shape. "No need. Just hold it in your hand." Han Dong stretched out his finger and peeled off tiny gray roots from his fingertips, allowing the skull to perfectly blend into Eugene's skin. After a while, the appearance of the bone carver was molded. His whole body exuded a chill, and even his expression and posture were exactly the same. Bop said softly, "Have you already comprehended the essence of the faceless? Your skills have improved a lot." "I can't say that I've comprehended the essence. I can only say that I've completed my self-awareness. There's still a distance to the true essence of understanding." The next second, Bop also turned into a big-headed undead with a head twice the size of an ordinary person. There were ice crystals growing on the surface of his brain. As for Han Dong, as his palm brushed across his face, he directly switched into the appearance of a white-haired skeleton. The woman's body and skin also turned into a beautiful ice crystal color. The internal organs and bones were clearly visible. It was very revealing. Just as everyone was about to jump down, Han Dong put the skull close to the old man that Eugene had transformed into and sniffed. Why is there a stench here? Even my disguise can't suppress it." "Eugene, can you restrain yourself a little? Is there a smell?" Eugene immediately stuck out his tongue and wanted to lick his whole body. Han Dong was so scared that he quickly stopped him. "Don't. It's good like this. A little smell shouldn't be discovered." After all, the bottom should be full of the smell of burning. They jumped down together. At a depth of about 500 meters, they landed steadily on the platform that was full of the smell of barbecued ribs and the smell of burning. As a big hole had been blown in the top floor of the temple, Han Dong and the others landed directly inside the temple. The upper area had been completely breached. Everything was burned, and there were no clues to be found. At this moment, a skull that was almost charred, with tissues similar to a finger bone growing from the neck, quickly crawled over from the corner. Hurry down and help. The group of invaders is heading to the Divine Library. Before he could finish his words, a slender arm of ice crystals held up the skull. Gray tentacles spat out from the woman's mouth and drilled directly into the charred skull. They invaded the consciousness and seized the memory that had just happened. The next second, clang! The charred skulls fell to the ground and turned into charcoal powder. How is this possible? Why are these guys here? Han Dong was so shocked that he muttered to himself. Nicholas, who are the invaders? They're the ones I just told you about, the rampagers from the Black Tower's control headquarters. Chapter 1849. Han Dong had been thinking about this problem. From the initial observation of the silhouette, the other mysterious team was all humanoid, and the possibility of them being hybrid demons was relatively small. After all, only some hybrid demons would take on humanoid form, and most of them were only humanoid and not a complete human mimicry. For example, Sally, who had goat hooves or exposed her tentacles, or had an extraordinarily exposed brain like Dr. Swollen. Therefore, Han Dong guessed that this team might be the dimensional explorers from the Black Tower. After all, the Black Tower and S-01 might establish a cooperative relationship in the near future. With the Black Tower's technology, they could move forward in the broken dimensions. Some exploration teams were sent in advance to measure the distance between worlds in order to establish a more stable world passage. He never expected that. Through reading the memory images, he saw a group of engineers and researchers wearing BC uniforms. There were also two individuals with completely different styles. They must be the rampagers in charge of leading the team. Han Dong also shared a rather exaggerated memory with Zhang Ziyan. Seeing this, Bop and Eugenius both revealed shocked expressions. This memory just happened to record how the explosion happened. In the image, a thin and weak man in the style of a British gangster seemed to be stained by dust on his coat, and he couldn't find the entrance to the lower level for a period of time. An impatient expression overflowed on his face. A box of dark red matchboxes with a skull bomb label was taken out. When it was ignited, the end of the matchbox burned with a black flame. When the black flame appeared, another rampager who looked like an employee immediately took out a stack of banknotes, seemingly to resist the impact of the explosion. When this seemingly ordinary matchbox fell freely and came into contact with the ground, a destructive explosion was instantly formed. A large hole was blasted into the interior of the temple, leading to the bottom. The climate and geological structure of the entire frozen continent were completely changed by this matchbox. Han Dong, disguised as an ice-skinned woman, said in a voice full of worry, "A matchbox has such power." Moreover, the heat of the explosion seemed to be targeted. The Temple of Undead caused great damage, even affecting and changing the structure and climate of the entire continent, but the members of the team closest to it weren't affected much. This was obviously the ultimate control of their ability. The opponent's level. Bop continued. The man who used the match should have strength comparable to the old Middle King. Furthermore, as you previously introduced, Nicholas, this group of special existences that are defined as rampagers have very special, fatal, or strange abilities. It will be even more troublesome to deal with them. Should we retreat or not? Eugene asked a very important question. Bop did not reply. Instead, he looked to Han Dong. From Bop's point of view, there was simply no need for him to stay here. In fact, he had only come to the shattered dimension because of his teacher's instructions. Han Dong reached out to comb the white hair on the skull. He was deeply immersed in his role. The risk has indeed exceeded the scope of what we can bear, and you have no reason to continue deeper. I am already very grateful that you are able to cooperate with me to explore the shattered dimension. Bop, you and Eugenius should return to the planet of plants first. Give me 6 hours. If I don't come back on time, you have to leave. This scene seemed familiar. Last time, when Professor Morgan forced him to explore the depths of the ruins, Han Dong also asked to stay alone. However, the nature of these two matters was completely different. Before Bop could respond, Eugenius expressed his opinion first. I'm just asking if we should retreat. If you don't want to retreat, we'll continue to follow. The necromancy book is a precious heritage of our world. How can we allow outsiders to take it away? Furthermore, it's a group of people who will pose a threat to our world. Since the other party is suspected to be at the middle level, we should continue to use this advantage that has not been exposed, yet to disguise ourselves as much as possible. We should avoid direct confrontation as much as possible. Everything should be focused on seizing the remnant page. Nicholas, since your necromancy eyes have been formed, you should be able to pinpoint the exact location of the remnant page, right? Han Dong was startled by Eugenius' words, and he immediately replied. The remnant page of the bone section should be sealed in a secret room or sealed by some method that I don't know. At present, we can only be sure that the remnant page is below. As for the specific location, we might be able to determine it if we get closer. Bob stood to the side and did not express his opinion. He must have tacitly agreed to the next course of action. I'll still lead, but this time you have to try to keep a distance of more than 10 meters from me. This will greatly increase the probability of a successful evacuation after being discovered. Let's go. Han Dong jumped directly into the big hole in the ground that had been torn apart by the explosion. Bop and Eugenius waited for a while before quietly following. This temple built of bones extended all the way to the underground center of this continent. The team led by the bank staff and the matchstick man was already close to the deepest part. In fact, their original purpose was to explore this place, pack up the relics, ruins, and even live bodies here and bring them back to BBC for research so as to deepen everyone's understanding of the shattered dimension and the hybrid demons. But not long after they arrived at the temple, they could clearly feel that everything here was affected and supported by a certain single substance. Even these more difficult undead that were immune to magic were born from this substance. The matchstick man made a last-minute decision. He changed the exploration plan to seize the single substance as the main goal. Even if the temple ruins were completely destroyed, he would not hesitate to kill all the living beings here. Using the matchstick method, they quickly arrived at the deepest part. In front of them, a door carved with human skeletons blocked their way. A disturbing aura overflowed from inside, and even a lot of white bones overflowed from the cracks of the door. Step back a little. The matchstick man still chose to blast open the door. He flicked a match burning with black flames with one hand. He held it between his thumb and index finger, and then flicked it with his middle finger. Boom! Through a special domain, the explosion range was just right for the size of the door. A scorching wave of fire gushed out from the dilapidated temple. However, when the heat wave dissipated, the bone door in front of them didn't move at all. Only a part of the human bones carved on the surface was charred. It seems that the thing sealed in here is quite interesting. Try this one. A completely different box of pure white matches was taken out. Before using this box of matches, the matchstick man showed a slightly reluctant expression, as if it was a precious item that was limited in number. Cha! When it ignited, a silent light blue flame lit up at the end. He couldn't feel any change in temperature at all. The match that was gently flicked out drew a perfect arc in the air and touched the bone door. He had thought that there would be a larger explosion. Who knew? The match was extinguished the moment it touched the door. To be precise, it should have transmitted a special flame into the door. The next second, the entire bone door ignited with a light blue flame, and the energy foundation that existed in the body of the door was completely burned out. Creak, although the door didn't seem to have changed, the sealing effect had been lost. With a gentle push, the heavy bone door slowly opened inwards. Chapter 1850. Han Dong had to stay close to the explosion craters and jump down from the temples. He also had to avoid the heat waves that would surge up at any time. Every time there was an explosion at the bottom, it would inevitably trigger a heat wave that would rush out of the ground. The undead along the way were also cleaned up and burned to ashes. The other side seemed to know that the hybrid demons had the characteristic of pollution, so they killed them instantly without giving them a chance to spread the pollution. I should be at the bottom level. The reaction of the Book of the Dead has also become quite strong. My bones are even trembling slightly. This situation can't be reversed by wisdom alone. It also depends on luck. I hope that the remnant page has given birth to a more perfect undead that can control the remnant page to a certain extent. It will be enough to confront this group of people. Otherwise, it will be too risky to seize the remnant page under their eyes. Even if Bop is here, I might be forced to stay. Thinking of this, Han Dong turned his head and looked above. Unexpectedly, Bop and Eugenus were still hundreds of meters away from the surface and didn't seem to have any intention of following him. What about the 10 meters? However, it's safer to be so far away. Even if I'm exposed, they can continue to hide and look for another opportunity. 10 meters was just a distance that Han Dong gave casually. In fact, if he wanted them to look like they were not a small team, Bop and Eugenus deliberately lagged behind, which would be more conducive to an emergency escape. He continued to jump down 3 floors. At this time, the magic eye could finally see the clear picture at the deepest level. The release of the faceless domain allowed Han Dong to perfectly blend in with the environment. It was basically impossible to be discovered. Behind that door should be the area where the remnant page is. The material of this door is completely different. Part of the remnant page's energy is integrated in it. Can it be blown open? Just as he finished speaking, boom! Another heat wave surged up. Han Dong quickly took a step back. The white hair on the skeleton's head was almost burned off. When the heat wave ended, Han Dong immediately stuck his head out to observe the situation below. Sure enough, the bone door leading to the Divine Library was not affected by the explosion at all. It didn't move at all. Well, what's this? When a matchstick man took out another box of white matches and lit it, Han Dong instinctively took a step back. As he gazed at the pale blue flame at the end of the match, his entire demonic eye actually felt as if it was being burned, and tears continuously flowed out of his eyes. There was even a heat that spread throughout his soul. The longer he stared at her, the higher the temperature in his soul. It had been a long time since Han Dong had such a direct sense of danger. This guy is ridiculously strong. He's more of a threat than Mr. Teacher's 5th incarnation, Dark Shadow, on a rainy night. He's probably on the same level as Deep House. If the match was thrown at me, the consequences would be unimaginable. Even if I borrowed a god, I would need to borrow an avatar like Baron Sabbath to survive. How unbearable. I didn't expect that the first remnant page I encountered in a broken dimension would be so troublesome. Moreover, there is an unknown factor. Han Dong turned his gaze to another rampager. This guy who looks like a bank employee has been doing nothing all this time. He hasn't really shown his true strength. Only when I read his memories did I see him take out cash to block the aftermath of the impact. After that, because of the match's explosion, he basically didn't take out any cash. If this guy's strength is similar to the man who used the match, the risk will double. I can only hope that there is an indigenous powerhouse behind this door that can form a stalemate with them. Han Dong didn't dare to use the demonic eye to spy on the other party. It was very likely that he would be directly exposed. When the entire Rampager squad stepped in the bone door, Han Dong also quietly followed. When he landed, he didn't make any sound. Because the bone door was only slightly opened, Han Dong, who was standing outside, couldn't see the specific situation inside. At least, there was no movement yet. Strange, these natives should have left all their core combat power inside when they know that a powerhouse is invading. Why is there no movement at all? Han Dong raised his head and motioned for his 2 companions to stay on top. He came to the bone door alone. He didn't rush to go in. Instead, he reached out and touched the human skeleton carved on the bone door. At the moment of contact, it was as if there was an electric current flowing through his brain, causing Han Dong's consciousness to be immersed in the inner world of the Book of Necromancy. He once again came in front of the giant lying on the plain, first-generation human. However, the scene he saw this time was slightly different. Han Dong could clearly see the skeleton structure of the giant, receiving information related to bones. Buzz. When his consciousness returned to reality, the skeleton carved and inlaid on the surface of the door was all sucked into Han Dong's body. Although he was currently in a camouflage state, a series of changes could be seen with the naked eye under the ice crystal skin. The surface of each bone was overflowing with a white luster. Abundant energy was gushing out from the bones. Could it be that the remnant pages of the undead spirit that exist here are welcoming my arrival? With doubts in mind, Han Dong stuck close to the crack of the door and quietly went inside. There's a different world. The interior was actually a relatively large space made of bones. Right in front of him was a long passage of bones. Judging from the traces left on the ground, the Rampager team had already followed this passage to the depths. The end was very likely to be the hiding place of the remnant pages. Just as Han Dong was about to follow them and was about to step into the passage, gurgle gurgle, a kind of liquid bone rose from the ground, completely blocking the passage. At the same time, a large amount of thick bones overflowed from the walls of the bone space and gathered in the center. A noble lady with a height of 2.5 meters was born from the bones. Although her appearance was similar to that of a human, her body organs were completely different. Her eye sockets were full of bone-like protrusions, floating up and down like small particles. Her abdomen was also bulging high, as if it was filled with the skulls of various children. One could even hear the cries of babies. The crystallized nails made of high-density bones were just long enough to hang down to the ground. Follow me, faceless. You are qualified to go to the Divine Library. Since the camouflage had been seen through, Han Dong immediately transformed into his original form. A braised egg head appeared, and through the interweaving of tentacles, he spoke in an ancient language. You are. Come over first. If those intruders discover the changes here, it will be troublesome. Even I am not confident in stopping them. After saying that, the ground in front of the woman caved in, forming a bone staircase that extended downwards. Han Dong immediately approached after confirming that the other party was not hostile. Even in terms of danger, this woman was less than the Rampager, although he was not sure whether the situation in front of him was a trap or an opportunity. Following her was the only choice. When he followed the woman down the stairs, the entrance above was immediately filled with bone liquid. When he arrived at the deepest part of the Divine Library, at first glance, he saw the location of the remnant pages. In the transparent cylinder filled with bone marrow liquid, the remnant pages of the Book of Necromancy were in a single-page state, floating in a scattered state. However, the scene here made Han Dong frown, except for the remnant pages soaked in the center. There were tens of thousands of ancient corpses hanging on the wall. Tubes connected to their bodies from the central cylinder, slowly transporting bone marrow liquid. Chapter 1851. Although Han Dong was surprised by the scene in front of him, he was also on guard against the woman behind him. Or rather, his demonic eye was locked on the other party. If this woman showed any hostility or any suspicious actions, Han Dong would immediately consider borrowing. After all, the woman also exuded the aura of a king. Based on the way she appeared, her appearance, and her extremely high bone transformation rate, it was easy to infer that this woman should be the true master of the Frozen Earth, a leader of the Voda's clan in the past. When he came to the deepest level of the Frozen Earth Temple, where the dead spirit remnant page was located, the woman did not do anything suspicious. However, the baby's belly grew bigger, and the children's cries grew louder. It seemed like they were hungry. Of course, what the children wanted to eat was not Han Dong, but the bone marrow in the room. After further confirming that the other party had no intention of framing him, Han Dong threw out a question. You built a lighthouse on the surface of the frozen earth. Only my demonic eye of death can capture the light emitted by the lighthouse. Is the purpose of attracting individuals like me, who truly grasps the book of death, to come here? After all, more than half of the remnant pages are scattered in broken dimensions. If there is an individual who can truly cultivate the book of death, they will definitely go deep into the dimension to search for other remnant pages. Sooner or later, they will find you here. Not all. Huh? No. Han Dong scratched his head. He did not expect his inference to be wrong. The woman comforted the child in her belly while explaining the purpose of the lighthouse to Han Dong. Attracting a true disciple like you is only a secondary purpose of building the lighthouse. After all, the Book of Death has existed since the birth of the hybrid demons. There has never been a true disciple who can control this book. Whether it is us or this remnant page, we do not place our hopes on the arrival of a true disciple. The main purpose of building the Bone Crystal Lighthouse is to illuminate the correct path to the hybrid demon world, and the one who asked us to build the lighthouse is. After saying that, the woman raised her finger and pointed at the remnant page in the container. Han Dong asked with a puzzled expression, the construction of the lighthouse was not out of your own will, but a request from the remnant pages? At this moment, the woman placed her right arm against the wall made of bones. A wave of ripples spread out, as if she was sensing something. The invaders haven't noticed anything strange. They don't seem to know about the demonic book's existence. They're only here to explore and gather information. In that case, we still have time. Next, I will tell you about the tragedy that befell our clan. Mr. Faceless, please listen carefully. As a true disciple, this story should be helpful to you. To me, it's a different kind of last words. Although Han Dong really wanted to just take the page and leave, he didn't. However, he couldn't turn down the offer in front of him. Since the woman's information might be useful, he didn't mind listening to it. All right. Han Dong pretended to be listening attentively. You should be very clear that the world cataclysm caused by humans has caused our universe to be torn apart by terrible boundary cracks one after another. The frozen land under my control, together with the entire planet, was sucked into this shattered dimension. The moment it fell into it, the planet disintegrated and nearly 80% of the individuals died. We, the Voda's clan, as accidental survivors, followed the broken frozen Earth continent and continued to drift between dimensions. We watched the continent disintegrate little by little and could only hide in the bunker and wait for death. However, death didn't come for a long time. Instead, there was an irresistible whisper in our brain, as if something more important than our lives fell into the frozen earth. Everyone walked out of the bunker at the same time and gathered in the center. The broken pages were scattered all over the frozen ground. It was precisely because the broken pages were here that the frozen ground was able to float stably between dimensions. At that time, we all thought this came from the care of Zhongbei and the old kings. But we didn't think that this was the beginning of the nightmare and pain. On the first night, when we came into contact with the torn pages, 60% of our clan lost their rationality and died fighting for the torn pages. Those who survived also quietly went through the undead transformation, and the bones slowly became the most important part of the body. As the transformation progressed, we began to no longer rely on the extreme cold, and could even move in a normal temperature state. Because this was only a part of the torn pages, we didn't have the advanced scroll as a foundation, so we couldn't cultivate it all. We could only passively accept this transformation. Little did we know that we were gradually turning into undead absolute, and we could even slowly hear the thought commands from the torn pages. Han Dong also threw out a question at this time. Strange. The people who were affected by the Book of the Undead should have a short lifespan, right? How could you survive for so long? I don't know. Maybe we didn't encounter the whole book, but a part of the torn pages related to bones. Or maybe this torn page doesn't want us to die so quickly, Because it needs to borrow our strength to return to its original world. Huh? Borrow your strength to return to the hybrid demon world? That's right. In the almost endless years, we have long lost the concept of time. We who have been reduced to undead slaves have been transforming this continent according to the torn pages requirements. Currently, the completion rate has reached 83%. Just one more step and the whole continent can move normally between the broken dimensions. And with the positioning of the lighthouse, we can return to our original world. Han Dong showed an expression of suddenly enlightened. I didn't expect that the torn pages would have self-consciousness. They enslaved you, deliberately preserved your consciousness, and extended your lifespan, and even provided you with the ability to reproduce and create. In essence, they wanted to use you as workers, working endlessly, and one day you can return to your original world and reconstruct the complete book of the undead. How interesting. No wonder there were so many giant bone pillars similar to legs growing at the bottom of the continent. Once completed, this continent should be able to walk between the broken dimensions. In this way, the other torn pages of the undead souls wandering between the dimensions should also use various methods to return to S01. This information is very important. Thank you. What about now? The woman showed a relieved smile. Now, we can be released in advance. The ultimate goal of the torn pages to return to their original world is to reconstruct the book of the undead. Since a true disciple like you is here, this process can be skipped. Thank you for coming. Take it and leave here. As for the group of unknown invaders, we will do our best to delay them and try to die with them. Okay. Han Dong didn't say much. He could see that the woman's greatest desire was to be free from the restrictions of slavery and to seek a true death. Plop! Han Dong jumped into the cylinder filled with fluid bones. There was no need for Han Dong to collect them one by one. When he fell in, all the torn pages automatically gathered around him. They automatically attached themselves to the advanced scroll. Book of the Undead, True Bone Volume, has been recorded. At the same time, Han Dong, who was immersed in the cylinder, didn't immediately come out. Bubbles rise to the surface. These essence bones, which have been stored for who knows how many years, stuck to the surface of Han Dong's skin and flowed into his body through his pores. Chapter 1852. It was just a collection. At present, Han Dong did not have the time to concentrate on reading the true Book of Bones, let alone practice it. Unlike the true book he had been accumulating during the growth period, and he also had a copy as a foundation, so he learned it quickly. But for the Bone Book, which had no foundation at all, it would inevitably take a lot of time. If there were only Bop, Eugene, and the local natives, Han Dong would definitely stay for a few months to concentrate on cultivation. But there was currently a completely hostile team from C here. The longer he delayed, the greater the risk. 10 minutes passed. When the last drop of bone mucus was sucked dry, a pure white metallic luster flowed through the skin all over his body. Although he didn't officially cultivate, the bones in Han Dong's body had undergone a qualitative change. Whether it was strength or toughness, they had reached a higher level. The upper limit of the body's load had almost doubled. Not only did it have a better ability to resist attacks, but could also last longer and exert better effects when using some forbidden secret techniques that required a great burden on the body. Crack, crack, crack. When he opened his eyes, Han Dong put his left and right hands in front of him. When he clenched his left and right fists, there was a crisp sound of joints. Just the collection and acceptance has such a physique improvement effect. If I complete the cultivation of the Bone Book, what will my body become? For the time being, I have to get out of here quickly. Han Dong suppressed his curiosity and quickly jumped out of the cylinder. As the remnant page was taken away by Han Dong, the fluid bone was sucked dry. The ice demon corpses hanging on the surrounding walls woke up one after another. Without the support of the demonic book, they would die quickly in a few months or even a few days. However, He showed a sincere smile that he had never shown before and waved goodbye to Han Dong. If it weren't for the arrival of Han Dong, their pain might have lasted for thousands of years. Han Dong also expressed his gratitude. Thank you for your help, allowing me to successfully recover the first remnant page in the broken dimension. My friends and I will evacuate the frozen earth. As for the group of intruders, I'll have to trouble you. It would be best if you could kill them. May the aurora of Apolia shine upon you forever. Han Dong smiled and turned around. He waved goodbye to the native undead as he walked up the stairs to the upper level. Just as he stepped onto the first step, Wong, a thought flashed through his mind. Han Dong's intuition and instinct allowed him to sense something. Or perhaps his demon, I had detected that something dangerous was approaching. He instinctively took a step back. Boom! The bone ceiling above his head was forcibly pierced through. A figure landed directly where Han Dong had been standing, and the stairs were smashed to smithereens. At the same time, brand new banknotes fell from the sky. The individual who landed in front of him slowly stood up, reached out his hand, and patted the dust off his body, and said with a look of surprise, "Oh, you actually managed to dodge it in advance. Are you really a mythical body? This is much more powerful than the mythical bodies I killed in my original world. You seem a little familiar. Have I seen you somewhere before?" Before his eyes, the person who had pierced through the bone layer and tried to kill Han Dong in one hit was the bank employee who didn't look much different from an ordinary person. Han Dong's understanding of this person was also completely zero. The only thing he could be sure of was that the other party was very strong. Naturally, he wasn't prepared to fight. His plan was to escape. Just as he was thinking about how to escape to the upper level and meet up with Bop and Eugenius, unexpectedly, something was falling freely from the bone layer above his head that had been pierced through by the bank employee. Taking a closer look, it was the match that was burning with black flames that had fallen out. And it wasn't just one match. It was a small handful, about 10 matches. It would take time for God to respond, and by that time, the physical body would have been burned to ashes. As the match spun and fell, Han Dong came up with a solution. It seemed to be the only solution, the void. Before coming to the shattered dimension, Han Dong received a week of special training in the void, and it was personally taught by Teacher Yu. Creak, creak, creak. Gray tentacles drilled out from the back of his head and tore open a portal in the void behind him. Unexpectedly, before the portal was completely formed, a starry sky arm stretched out from the inside of the void, grabbed Han Dong's shoulder, and pulled him in. Huh, what kind of method is this? The bank employee watched the changes in the starlight in front of him and tried to reach out to grab it, but he couldn't grab anything. He could only show a puzzled expression. At present, the match was about to fall, so he had to take some defensive measures. He put a large note into his pocket and didn't do anything else. The moment the match touched the ground, boom, a dull internal sound spread out between the dimensions. The entire frozen continent seemed to be on the verge of collapsing. Cracks extended from the ground all over the continent. The melted bones and rock layers formed a special kind of pale yellow magma that gushed out from the cracks. If it suffered any more large impact, it would completely collapse. Divine Library. Other than the women who had been pregnant for several years and a few elites who survived, everything else was burned to ashes. Mr. Match, there was a very suspicious guy just now. He escaped using a spatial method I've never seen before. Moreover, the main substance that exists below seems to be gone, and its aura has disappeared. There's a high probability that it was taken away by that guy. Spatial method? I'm really not very good at this. Try your best to get it back. I'll capture these high-quality individuals who can withstand the match alive. There seems to be a king among them. They must be very good research materials. The harvest this time is really not bad. Okay, I'll try my best to get it back. The bank employee held the note with his fingers and easily tore open a spatial passage. He followed the strange, starlight feeling just now and chased after it. Buzz! When Han Dong came back to his senses, he had already arrived at the surface area, and he happened to be in a certain bunker. He used the bunker's facilities to block the explosion heat wave from underground. The one who dragged him out was naturally Bop. As Han Dong had gone into the Bowen door alone for a long time, Bop still took the risk to follow him due to the worry between his teammates and the advice of his teacher. Although he couldn't find the entrance to the Divine Book Room, he could barely confirm that Han Dong was below through the void perception. When Han Dong tried to cross space below, Bop immediately felt a strong connection. He grabbed the spatial node and dragged him out. "How is it? Our luck is pretty good. We've already obtained the remnant page. Let's quickly retreat." Wanting to retreat to the planet wasn't something that could be done simply by teleporting. After all, this was a broken dimension. Even Bop had to draw a teleportation array. Moreover, he couldn't directly teleport to the planet. He could only teleport to a relatively close position. When the array was drawn, Bop suddenly felt a spatial fluctuation coming from underground. Someone is chasing after us. The other party has a certain level of attainment in space. Since we can only teleport to a position about 2 kilometers away from the planet, if we directly escape, the planet's vehicle will be exposed. As Aang, the other party might have the means to destroy the planet or leave a special mark. "Bop, you mean since there's only one person chasing after us, and the suspected middle matchstick man is still in the west, we have to think of a way to repel him. We have to safely escape without exposing the planet." Okay. Chapter 1853. Through his spatial affinity, Bop could clearly confirm that there was only one person chasing after him. Moreover, he didn't capture much heat from the other party. In other words, the pursuer wasn't the guy who used the matchstick, but another mysterious employee who hadn't made a move so far. Based on the current intelligence, it could also be speculated that the matchstick man was suspected to have reached the medium level. There was almost zero information about this bank employee, and it wasn't clear what level the other party was at. However, according to Han Dong's tracking and observation along the way, in terms of priority, this bank employee should be behind the matchstick man. Before he carried out some more important actions, he would consult the matchstick man. Considering this, the employee's strength might be a little lower. Han Dong took advantage of the free time before the battle and added, "Just now, I had a slight contact with the other party in the underground area. The other party's ability is roughly related to money. I can't speculate what kind of ability it is and how to use it. After all, the Out of Control is a group of guys who are beyond common sense and can't be measured by ordinary rules. Moreover, this guy also has an unreasonable power that can penetrate the hardest wall of the temple by himself." When Bop heard this, he had already formulated the most basic battle plan. Money, unreasonable power, and extraordinary spatial skills. I'm afraid we don't know more than 10% about him. In that case, it's best if one person acts as an observer and also takes into account the role of auxiliary combat, not participating in the main battle. The other two should use all their strength to fight the other party. Even if they are at a disadvantage, they should try their best to delay the other party so that the observer can collect enough information and find the other party's weakness. Who will be this observer? When Bop threw out this question, Han Dong and Eugenus looked at him at the same time. No one was more suitable for such a role than Bop. With Bop's knowledge, he could definitely quickly analyze the target. More importantly, only he could fully utilize the role of spatial assistance in the Shattered Dimension, which could not only increase the mobility of his teammates, but also greatly increase their safety. Okay, you two be careful. If this person also has the medium level, I will consider forcibly evacuating. Even if the planet is exposed or destroyed, it's better than us dying here. It's coming. Nicholas, you're on the left. When Bop shouted, Han Dong had actually dodged in advance and hurriedly took 3 steps back. Boom! The bunker that had blocked the raging flame blast many times was smashed apart by a single punch. The bank employee patted the dust off his body and said with a surprised expression, "Sigh. You actually dodged it again. Are your eyes capable of futuristic vision? Did you see my attack path ahead of time?" That's amazing. During the compliment of the bank clerk, Han Dong and Eugenius were ready for battle. Bop, on the other hand, took a step back and disappeared into the void, just as the battle was about to break out. However, the bank employee stretched out his hand to block in front of him and stared at Han Dong with a puzzled expression. Wait, don't be in such a hurry to hit me. Have we met somewhere before? That shouldn't be the case. This is the first time I've left the house, but you give me a familiar feeling. Have you ever been to the BC? Han Dong did not intend to answer this question. At this moment, the bank clerk suddenly showed an expression of enlightenment. I remember now. Are you the young hybrid demon who got full marks in the Q&A session in the Deep House not long ago and made Mr. Teacher suffer? You even released a lot of pollution during your escape, which made us spend a lot of time cleaning up after the incident. It should be you. You're the only one who has recently visited the BC staff and met the hybrid demon characteristics. At that time, I happened to be in the containment room managed by Mr. Deep House, and I was very impressed by your performance in the Q&A session. The bank employee said so. Han Dong also remembered the scene at that time. He did not expect to be recognized. I said that I felt a sense of familiarity when I first saw you. I didn't expect it to be such a coincidence. Although Mr. Teacher is a member of the committee and is considered a big shot in my eyes, I don't like this person very much. The main reason is that he tried to lecture me. Fortunately, I didn't become his student. When I first heard about Mr. F's accident, I was quite happy. I've always been curious about what kind of person could deceive Mr. Teacher. I didn't expect to meet you here so soon. Mr. Match should take some time to deal with down there. Why don't you tell me in detail how you deceived Mr. Teacher? Tell me the story and give me the thing you took from this frozen land. I'll pretend that you accidentally escaped. After all, you have mastered a spatial technique that I've never seen before. Mr. Match should believe it. By the way, don't try to deceive me with other objects. As a bank employee, I still have the ability to distinguish between real and fake. Han Dong responded with a smile. It's just a story. As for the thing I just took from the temple, it's of no use to you. The bank clerk could only show a somewhat helpless expression and spread out his hands. Then he pulled off his tie, rolled up his sleeves, and hit the ground with the tip of his leather shoes to adjust the comfort of the soles of his feet. He did not want to accidentally kick the leather shoes away during the fight. He made the posture of an office worker who was about to fight. You really don't want to take it out? Then there's no other way. Considering that you once defeated Mr. Teacher, I'll use all my strength to deal with you. During the conversation, Han Dong had been observing the bank clerk with his magic eye. Although he could see through the clerk's skin layer, the internal scene made Han Dong very puzzled. The clerk's body structure was exactly the same as that of a normal human, including the type and distribution of organs. But in the normal body structure, there was a distinctive gold-rimmed outline. Every bone, every internal organ, and even every blood vessel was outlined with a rather conspicuous gold-rimmed outline. There was no way to know what these gold-rimmed outlines symbolized and what they were used for. There was no sign of energy transmission in his body. It was impossible to judge the type and level, and no domain was released. Just as the bank clerk was getting dressed, Eugenius, who had been watching from behind for a long time, made a move. Since the bank clerk had been focusing on Han Dong, Eugenius had been looking for an opportunity. A large number of small green tentacles had grown from the soles of his feet, pushing Eugenius' body forward at an extremely terrifying speed. From a blind spot, he rushed behind the bank clerk, Buzz. While charging forward, he was actually affected by the void, giving Eugenius a longer acceleration distance and being able to teleport directly behind the bank clerk. The green tentacles that grew from his back handed the spear hidden in the sarcophagus to Eugenius. Got it. Spear of Achilles, legendary. Teeth grew from his palms and bit out the shaft of the spear, increasing its stability and the strength transmitted to the spear. The black flesh robe on his body was also attached to his entire body at this moment. As a kind of external muscle, it further increased his overall strength. The eye of Schooners locked onto the target, confirming that the other party could not make any dodging movements. The spear pierced through. Ding! Between the frozen earth, a circle of air waves visible to the naked eye spread in all directions. Buzz, the body of the spear, kept trembling. Eugenus' arm holding the spear also became numb from the vibration, and the teeth that were biting the shaft of the spear were all broken. The tip of the spear stopped at the surface of the back of the head, unable to pierce through it all. Not even a strand of hair was broken. How is this possible? Eugenus was not the only one with wide eyes. Even Bob, who was in the void, had almost the same expression. Shock was shock. Eugenus decisively retracted his hand when his attack failed to succeed, wanting to pull away from the other party. An ordinary fist had already landed on his abdomen. Boom! A ripple of air, stronger than before, spread out. A green figure flew backward like a laser, almost crossing the frozen earth and crashing through several thick icebergs. It barely stopped at the edge of the continent. The bank clerk retracted his fist and looked at the green blood on the surface with a surprised expression. Oh, a punch actually didn't shatter it directly. You mythical entities are really powerful. Chapter 1854. On a huge iceberg close to the edge of the frozen earth, a strange figure flew straight over, and the impact caused the entire iceberg to tremble. The individual trapped in the iceberg only stopped after reaching the center of the mountain. The penetrated ice was stained with stinky green mucus. Eugenus was directly knocked out of his original form by this punch. Hundreds of dark green tentacles cushioned and offset the impact damage for him. Otherwise, it was very likely that he would fly out of the frozen ground and fall into the dangerous void area. Whoa! He couldn't hold his breath, and all kinds of fine pieces of internal organs were vomited out along with his body. Eugenus' head was wrapped in a body similar to a slime, and he showed a rather relieved smile. If it wasn't for the severe cold at the beginning, and for me to wear the black meat jacket custom-made from the meat mountain, my body and soul would have been torn apart by this punch. This gap is too exaggerated, and I can't even understand the principle behind it. I have to figure out one thing. How can the other party not be hurt when he's not on guard? This can't be the effect of a difference in strength. Even if he's really ridiculously strong, it's impossible to be completely unhurt in that situation. Legendary equipment can shake the truth, and the attack I just gave was also accompanied by M.O.'s power. It's impossible for such a blow to be harmless. It must have consumed something, but it can't be seen on the surface. If I can't figure this out, we'll all be killed. Ugh. Another bout of vomiting. Eugenus felt like he was about to collapse. At this moment, Pop's voice came from his brain. Through your contact with Eugenus just now, I can basically confirm that this person's level is also close to the middle level. Your current position is just close to the planet of plants. Retreat by yourself first. Han Dong and I will find a way to escape with the void. Can we really escape, Pop? If this guy discovers the hidden planet of plants, he'll probably smash it to pieces with a few punches. It'll be hard for us to escape then. This guy is really strong, but he's also a little strange. My Eye of Hugs can vaguely see the strangeness in this. If we can find this strange point, we might have a chance. With this kind of injury, I might not be able to move again in the past, but I can still take it now. That's good. Nicholas doesn't seem to be ready to leave directly. Just then, across several icebergs, Eugenus' eyes saw a gray beam of light that descended from the battlefield dozens of kilometers away. A few seconds later, the beam of light descended. An invisible pressure spread across the frozen land. Even Eugenus, who was at the edge of the iceberg, could clearly feel the impact of this pressure. He even imagined a terrifying image in his mind. A certain black object spread out in his consciousness. It even made Eugenus feel that there was a black shadow floating behind him. Although it's a borrowed god, but in the end, what kind of strength it could display and how high the degree of compatibility it could achieve were all related to the main body. After all, it was only borrowing a divine spark. Nicholas is already this strong. I'm really unwilling to accept this hiss. It hurts. Eugene looked down at his belly. The fist imprint that was branded into his body was just a hair away from piercing through his body. His soul was also crushed by the fist and was severely deformed. Even the world in his body, the small world that contained the corpse-eating order and the black mountain of flesh that belonged to Eugenius, almost collapsed. It was too dangerous. In the past, if he didn't have the support of his inner world and the mountain of flesh to bear the brunt of the impact, he would have died already. He gritted his teeth. Eugenius reached into his inner world. On the altar of the main church, he directly took the demonic book, corpse-eating order's ritual, that was being devoutly worshipped and sacrificed by the teachers. Due to the interruption of the sacrificial process, the demonic book seemed to be a little unhappy. The big mouth on the cover kept rubbing and making sounds like it wanted to eat someone. Eugenius raised his head and looked at the layer of ice above his head. He sighed softly. I really didn't want to use this move. This is a trump card I've kept for a long time. I was going to use it to deal with you. Nicholas, I didn't expect to use it to cooperate with you. Cough, cough, cough. But it's true. If I die, I won't be able to defeat you anymore. Trump cards have to be used sooner or later. I'll let you see. Eugenius activated the power of the demonic book to grow mouths all over his body. All the mouths wriggled together under the trend of common consciousness, chanting an ancient forbidden language. This kind of language was not commonly used. Only a small number of hybrid demons who were proficient in linguistics or had special experiences could understand it. When Bob heard this language, he immediately cut off the connection with Eugenius. Even if he only listened for a few seconds, it made Bob feel uncomfortable all over. It was as if something was gnawing at his body and licking his internal organs. This guy Eugenius can still reach a higher level. His compatibility with the demonic book is actually so high. No wonder the teacher gave him the corpse-eating order's ritual as a reward. Just as Bob was slightly shocked, Eugenius had completed the chanting of the forbidden spell. He immediately made a suicidal move that ordinary people would find unimaginable. He stuck his head into the corpse-eating order's ritual and completely into the mouth of the raw food that grew on the cover of the book. Before his death, Eugenius left behind the last words. Bob, please help me teleport this book over. It will save me some time on the way. As soon as he finished speaking, crack, the demonic book closed its mouth and continued to reject Eugenius' head. It didn't even let go of a drop of green juice that splashed out. After eating the head, it continued to chew on the body in large mouthfuls. It quickly sucked the green-eyed tentacles like it was sucking powder. Each eyeball could form a bursting effect in its mouth. Smack, smack, smack. The sound of eating also continued. The demonic book's bloody mouth devoured Eugenius' body in just over 10 seconds. According to the last words, smack, Bob snapped his fingers. A crack in the void of a suitable size formed under the demonic book and was sent to the center of the frozen ground where the battle was taking place. However, the central battle area had been covered by some kind of extreme darkness and had completely spread out. It was even purer and more extreme than the darkness in the city of London. Whether it was the remaining layer of ice, the scorched ground, or even the gushing magma, they were all dyed black. Only the bank employee's body didn't change color at all. I can't hit him? The bank employee had already thrown out several punches, but only the surface of his fist was stained with some black substance and couldn't hit the target normally. 50 meters away, a black man stood upright. His skin, teeth, hair, and eyes were all black. There was also an equally black crow standing on his shoulder. This kind of black was more like black agate, pure and glossy. Chapter 1855. When Eugenius' attack was completely ineffective, and at the same time, he suffered a near-destructive blow, Han Dong's expression did not change much, and his magic, I even vaguely saw through something. If Eugenius' attack just now had caused a trace of damage, I would have been wary, but a complete immunity like this is not caused by the difference in level, but by this guy's ability. It seems that there is no defensive action. In fact, some kind of automatic defense system should be operating the entire time. It must have consumed some kind of substance to resist the attack just now. Could it be money? Han Dong recalled the few times the bank clerk appeared, it would be accompanied by the scattering of banknotes. He, who had conducted a comprehensive tour of BBC, also knew that the ability of a rampager was often special and strange. It was entirely possible that it was related to money. I have to go one step further. As long as I find out the connection of this guy's ability, I might have a chance to defeat him. It is impossible to escape. With this level of superhuman physique, it is completely possible to destroy the plant planet with a few punches. He must be repelled or restrained for a period of time. I hope that my luck will be better this time. As early as when the bank clerk arrived, Han Dong had already wove the array imprint of the god summoning ritual in his brain with his tentacles. The foundation of this ritual was to establish a stable one-way transmission channel with a gray walker that ignored any obstacles, so that the other party could transmit the random divine spark over. However, the channel connected to this ritual did not lead to Gray National Shalnos or the Chaos Court, but to another main city of humans on Earth, Dragon City. In a marketplace that was filled with shouts and shouts, a dark-skinned man with an Asian face and wrapped in gray clothes was strolling through some stalls. Occasionally, he would buy exquisite handmade jewelry. If he met a stall owner who had a good attitude, he might be given an additional gold coin with a faceless head on it. Of course, the walker would not come to such a place for no reason. It was mainly because of the upcoming Sharp Horn Conference. As it involved a temporary cooperation with the Black Tower, it would determine the future direction of the world, and it required all the old kings above the middle level to be present. The Void Space made a request, hoping that the walker could help find the special old king who had once been rejected by the collective and basically did not participate in any gatherings or meetings. According to intelligence, the yellow robe was suspected to have appeared in Dragon City in recent years. However, even though the walker had personally come and disguised himself as a normal person and traveled around Dragon City for an entire day, he still could not find Yellow Robe. He only managed to find some traces left behind. At this moment, as Han Dong activated the god-borrowing ritual, he felt the urge to urinate. The walker quickly made his way to the public latrine in the market and quietly settled the request from Han Dong. Just as he stood in front of the urinal and was about to unbuckle his belt and pee, another person walked into the outhouse. This time, he was holding a novel that had just been printed out. He deliberately stood beside the walker and began to relieve himself. Long time no see. Do you want to see my new work? It's an epic masterpiece that combines the elements of history, local martial arts, and fantasy. The walker did not refuse. He only lowered his head to indicate that he was unbuckling his belt and aiming. Only then did he have the time to take the novel from the other party. Helpless, the other party could only tuck the booklet under his armpit and aim as well. Nicholas, is he borrowing something from you? Yes, that guy seems to be in trouble in the distant shadow dimension. I'm only lending him the qualification. It's up to him how he performs. Sigh, that guy is a talent. I originally wanted to train him, but unfortunately, he was completely poached by you. Thinking about it, his mind was not in the field of literature. Since then, I no longer cared about him. By the way, what kind of qualification did you borrow this time? The walker did not answer verbally. He only signaled with his eyes to look down. When Yellow Robe lowered his head to look, he was shocked. The color of the pea was actually black. Have you been a little heaty recently? I happen to know an old Chinese doctor in Dragon City. I'll bring you to see him later. By the way, can Nicholas control such a stimulating qualification? He should be able to... The walker shook his weapon and said solemnly, let's talk about our matters. Since your novel has been printed, you should have time to participate in the meeting, right? This meeting will involve the Outer Realms, so I need you to cast a vote. God-borrowing ritual has been responded. Random incarnation selected, Black Man, rating, A, high-level incarnation ranked at the top, applicability, S-. This incarnation is compatible with the dark magic of the main body of the god. It can maximize 100% of the incarnation's potential. Note, during the ritual, the mythical puzzle, dark magic will be affected, changed, or even completely changed. At the same time, except for dark magic, the body and soul of the individual will be completely dyed black during the ritual. Ability points: frowny face strength, E-, durability, E-, agility, E-, magic power, S+, luck, S+, related abilities of the God Borrower have been upgraded: frowny face, dark magic, dark arts. The casting method and the effect of dark magic were fundamentally different from that of regular magic. Moreover, the effect would affect the surrounding environment, space, allies, and the caster to a certain extent. Territory. It has become a black land. This territory cannot be controlled normally, including retraction, range control, or change of target. When the ritual is completed, the black land will begin to spread from the feet. Everything affected by the territory will be dyed black. Special passive skill, dyed black, has been acquired. Any attack by the divine body will dye the target and the surroundings black. When using dark arts to attack, the rate of blackening will be doubled according to the damage caused. Substances that are dyed black will have the following reactions. 1. Inorganic objects or non-conscious organic substances will undergo material transformation and turn into black substances that can be absorbed by the divine body to replenish magic. 2. Organic substances with consciousness will slowly become negative until they are completely eroded. The speed of erosion is directly related to the level of the individual. 3. They're more susceptible to dark arts attacks and suffer more damage. Moreover, the damage will affect the whole body and cause damage to the consciousness. The divinity that Han Dong borrowed this time should be the strongest divinity other than the pharaoh. Moreover, its nature was quite extreme. The attributes related to the body were all at the lowest value. It was even difficult to make some fast movements. Once it ran, it would pant heavily. However, it was also this extreme that seemed to be able to restrain the superhuman physique of the bank employee. He raised his hand. A twisted black beam of light shot straight at the bank employee. Although the bank employee reached out to catch it, the skin on the surface of his palm was slightly dyed black. Just as he frowned, the truth magic sword that had long been hidden in the darkness slashed down from behind. Chapter 1856. Danger. For a bank employee, he rarely had such an extreme feeling. Even when he went on a killing spree in the original world, he did not have a very direct sense of danger. As long as someone came looking for trouble, he would kill until no one came looking for trouble. However, when he was captured and sent to the Black Tower Control Headquarters to become a member of the Rampagers, when he came into contact with Mr. F, he felt danger for the first time. However, he successfully offset his teacher's preaching with his unique physique and money. In addition, there were some committee members who were at the same level as Mr. F, and they would occasionally feel danger when they met him. However, these people were all of a higher level than him, so it was normal for them to feel danger. However, the young man in front of him, who had not yet become a king and was not even a fake king, gave him this feeling. When the gray beam of light descended, the young man turned into a black man through the self-made mask. Although the bank employee smelled a powerful aura, he only felt that it was not easy to kill him. When the truth demonic sword, hidden in the darkness, appeared behind him, a real sense of danger overflowed all over his body like ice liquid. He displayed superhuman reflexes and physical speed. When he was about to be slashed by the demonic sword, whoosh, he dodged sideways. At the same time, his whole body turned into a yellow flash and was 100 meters away. No wonder Mr. F lost an avatar. You must have used this weapon to trick him once after gaining his trust, right? Such a weapon should be very expensive. It must cost a lot of money to buy it, right? I have to find a way to end the battle quickly. You are really dangerous. As soon as he finished speaking, the bank employee's body was covered with a very thin layer of gold rim. It was thin and weak. Ordinary eyes could not see it at all. Only Han Dong's magic eye could barely see it. The appearance of the gold rim meant that the bank employee had become more serious. Even if he stood in a completely black field, he ignored the influence of the dyed black. Whoosh! The bank employee moved at an incredible speed. Even the magic eye had to focus all its attention to catch him. Han Dong might only be able to keep up with this speed if he borrowed an avatar of agility S or above. This black man with agility E- was many levels lower than him. However, Han Dong had no intention of keeping up. Whoosh! Whoosh! He rolled up his sleeves, revealing his muscular forearms. He threw out 5 consecutive punches. Every punch could easily tear through space, creating a deafening sonic boom. After finishing his punch, he immediately followed it up with a spin. His trousers and leather shoes drew a perfect arc in the air. This upward sweep and side kick even formed a crescent-shaped impact that cut the iceberg 1,000 meters away in half. However, every banknote that was touched by his fingers would shine with a golden luster, slowly merging with the golden edge of his body. It's really money. This is the time. Pope snapped his fingers at this moment. A void door, which was only about 10 centimeters long, split open at the position where the bank employee was counting the money. The stinking demonic book appeared directly, gnawing and swallowing all the glowing banknotes in one bite. How dare you eat my money? Such an action caused the bank employee to fly into a rage. Just as he was about to punch the demonic book, there was another sense of danger. This time, it came from the demonic book in front of him. If he punched it, his arm might be swallowed. Suppressing the anger in his heart, he retracted his fist and once again distanced himself by a few hundred meters. Smack! The demonic book that fell out of the void fell heavily to the ground. An arm that seemed to be stitched together and full of cracks drilled out from the cover of the demonic book and supported itself on the ground. Immediately after, the flesh on the surface of the demonic book began to differentiate and multiply. With the corpse-eating cult ritual as the center, a strange body structure was carried out. It was as if something had been eaten, crushed into minced meat, and then spat out and reformed. Deformed and strange, stinking and extremely evil, as a head of green hair fell down. Eugenus appeared with a new appearance. The corpse-eating cult ritual was no longer held in his hand, nor was it stored in his body. Instead, it was used as his core heart, sewn together and embedded in the left side of his chest. Whether it was his eye sockets, nostrils, or the surface of his ears, they were all filled with teeth. It was as if each of his senses had become a new mouth. There was also a small mouth at the tip of his finger, constantly grinding his teeth. It seemed to have some special effect. This was Eugenus' real trump card. Demonic book posture only when the individual's compatibility with the demonic book reached an extremely high value could it be achieved, and the possibility of a backlash was very high. In the history of the development of the hybrid demons, only a few individuals could achieve this. Of course, Eugenus, who had not yet completely learned the demonic book, could not completely master it. What he displayed so far could only be considered a half-finished product. If he could complete the collection of 9 corpses, he might be able to achieve a more stable state. Every second he was in this state increased the risk of a backlash. It could even be seen that the additional mouths on Eugenus' body would occasionally gnaw on his own flesh. What kind of monsters are you guys? The bank employee scratched his head, revealing a somewhat passive and helpless expression. Chapter 1857. A high-level avatar like this would not only have a greater burden, but it would also have a greater impact on the user. Even though Han Dong had now reached the mythical level, compared to the previous complete God's descent, now he only borrowed the Godhead and imitated it deeply through the faceless one's perception. He would still be affected by the level of thinking. The black man brought a negative attitude that penetrated the soul. It even seriously affected Han Dong's fighting style. Although the completely sublimated black art was extremely aggressive, The various magic attacks released by Han Dong were slightly perfunctory. It was not like he was fighting for victory, but just forcing the opponent to retreat. Whenever the bank staff retreated or opened up a certain distance, Han Dong's attack frequency would be significantly reduced, perhaps because of the distance limit of the magic sword, but mainly because Han Dong was unwilling to pursue. When Eugenus returned to the battlefield in the demonic book form, the Black Han Dong just widened his eyes slightly and returned to his normal expression after a second. Hey, Eugenus still has this trick. Huh, this should be able to force the opponent back, and I can also use a little less strength. Dying black puts a lot of burden on the whole body. If I hadn't completed the collection of the True Bone Book in the temple and absorbed the bone mucus accumulated by the indigenous people over the years, my body wouldn't have been able to withstand it for long. Let's end it quickly. I want to leave here. Hey, it's completely boring to fight like this. Even if we exhaust all our energy, we certainly can't kill this guy. Once we are delayed until the matchstick man comes to help, we will all die here. Although he didn't want to fight, his thoughts were very negative. But Han Dong also clearly realized that he couldn't drag it on. Otherwise, his life would be in danger. He could only take the initiative to contact Eugenus. Just as Han Dong established a telepathic channel and got into Eugenus' mind, he felt like he was being bitten. His brain was aching. He could also clearly feel Eugenus' incomparably chaotic state of mind. It was like getting into a swollen space full of mouths and communicating privately with Eugenus, who was buried deep in it. Hey, Eugenus, can you hear me? Yes. The answer was quite reluctant. We have to use everything we have in the shortest amount of time possible to force this fellow away as much as possible. If this drags on, we won't be able to hold on either. Once the stickmen catch up, we'll definitely die. Yes. As soon as he finished speaking, Han Dong recalled the truth demonic sword that was swimming in the darkness and held it in his hand. This was because the demon sword had the ability to grow and adapt. It also followed its master's current state and was entangled with strands of dark matter, showing the state of actively dying black. The demon sword itself had followed Han Dong for such a long time and had grown a lot. Especially when Han Dong used soul borrowing, it would always absorb some of its characteristics, including Baron Sabbath and Night Roar. Instead of controlling it with his mind, he held it with his own hands. This could indeed increase the power of the technique, but there was a huge flaw. Consciousness control could give the demon sword an extremely fast attack speed and a long-range attack range. At the same time, it could also hide in the darkness and deliver a surprise attack. Even so, even in the face of superhuman bank staff, he had not hit even once. Now, he was using an avatar with the lowest physical attributes to wield the sword. How could he hit it? However, Han Dong didn't want to hit the target himself. Instead, he threw a question into the void. Pop, can you let me hit that guy? He didn't get an answer immediately. After a while, he replied, I should be able to. Then I'll leave it to you. As soon as he finished speaking, Han Dong dissolved himself into the black land. At present, the range of the domain had reached 1,000 meters. Within the range of the domain, Han Dong could disassemble himself into an ink state and appear in any area. Of course, this kind of transfer was also very slow. It needed to go through the two processes of disassembly and reorganization. It was impossible to threaten the bank staff. Gurgle, gurgle, the position where Han Dong reappeared was exactly opposite Eugenus, sandwiching the target in the middle. Eugenus, go. When the two of them attacked the bank staff at the same time, the other party didn't take Han Dong seriously at all. His gaze was fixed on Eugenus the entire time. Firstly, it was because the banknotes were eaten. Secondly, he knew very well that it would take a lot of effort and time to completely kill Han Dong's black state. It was better to quickly kill the real body like Eugenus first. Moreover, Han Dong's speed was no threat to him at all. Buzz! When the two of them attacked together, the bank staff directly turned into a golden flash and stepped in front of Eugenus. Is it because of this book that I can cause such a big change and even forcibly surpass the mythical level? He locked onto the demonic book on Eugenus' chest, regarded it as a weakness, and punched out. There was a detail here. The corpse-eating cult ritual was inlaid on the chest, but the surface was covered with a layer of leather cover, a strange cover with black hair and a certain geometric structure. When the fist touched the demonic book, the impact was very strange. It didn't feel like hitting a book, nor did it feel like hitting a person. It was like hitting the surface of a mountain. This wasn't an ordinary mountain, but a black mountain of flesh the size of Antarctica. It was wriggling like a living creature and had once been a city of the ancients. Boom! Layers of shock waves spread in all directions, and even the ground cracked and sank. With such a powerful blow, Eugenus only flew backward for more than 20 meters. He immediately bit the ground with his mouth that grew out of his toes and stabilized his body. He successfully withstood the opponent's blow head-on. Next, Eugenus' body underwent further changes. The cover of the book formed by the mountain of flesh quickly extended and turned into a kind of full-body armor. It was equivalent to a layer of black muscles covering the whole body. Eugenus' overall body also looked stronger. Without any fear, he rubbed his mouth all over his body and rushed toward the bank staff as fast as he could. A physical fight that surpassed the mythical level officially began. However, the bank staff was stronger in terms of strength, speed, and reflexes. Boom, boom. 7 punches in a row. All of them hit Eugenus' abdomen. 7 fist marks deep in his body were clearly visible, and each punch caused a strong explosion behind him. He was once again sent flying in the air. The attack didn't stop. The golden flash followed and made an extremely difficult turning kick in the air. The kick landed heavily on Eugenus' abdomen, changed the trajectory of his backward flight, and crashed into the ground like a missile. Boom! The frozen Earth continent was shaking. The point of impact formed a multi-layered circular crater nearly a kilometer in diameter. The bank staff didn't continue to pursue, but landed not far away, frowning. Drip, drip, bright red blood dripped from his fist. Slight bite marks appeared on the surface of his fist. A large piece of rubber from the sole of the leather shoe that delivered the kick also fell off. With a flash of golden light, the wound was immediately healed. The bank staff frowned and said, "The attack can reach such a level." At this time, Han Dong, as the black man, just arrived from behind and used all his strength to wield the magic sword. But such a sword-swinging speed was ridiculous here. The bank staff didn't even need to be distracted and could easily dodge it. He only cared about one thing now. How long would it take for Eugenus to be killed? Crack! Deep in the center of the crater, an arm covered with black muscles slowly propped its body up. The muscle layer formed by the mountain of flesh was obviously damaged, but it's still tightly wrapped around Eugenus. He's really durable. This information must be brought back to the BC. The bank staff adjusted his state of mind and continued to arrive in front of Eugenus in a flash. Only then did he lock onto the head. First, an upward punch hit the chin. Boom. When the shock wave rippled out in the air, Eugenus was sent flying vertically, and even his neck was completely elongated. Your neck should be torn off. The golden edge on the surface of the right leather shoe deepened. Accumulating power, he turned around and delivered a high sweep with a high degree of completion. The heel of the leather shoe accurately hit Eugenus' temple. Boom! The ground exploded again. Eugenus' neck, which had already been elongated vertically, was further pulled sideways. Crack, crack, crack! The black muscles covering the surface and the neck were torn apart at the same time. Such a powerful attack also completely stagnated the brain's functions. But, as a perfect biological instinct of schooners, Eugenus attacked in return. Crack! A large tearing mouth grew from the side of his face and bit down on the bank staff's leather shoe. At the same time, the neck that was about to be torn off. But a large number of teeth grew in the wound, and by biting the rupture, they forcibly maintained the integrity of the neck, forming a stalemate. As the leather shoe was bitten, the bank staff couldn't pull out his right foot for a moment. It was as if he had kicked into a mountain of flesh, and was stuck in it. At the same time, buzz! Something slashed at him from behind. Although his right foot was bitten, the bank staff could still barely dodge and rely on his left foot to turn sideways. A sword cut through space and failed to hit the target. But the bank staff who dodged sideways was surprised. "Who are you?" The person who delivered this sword strike was not Han Dong, but the Starry Sky youth who held the cosmic light sword. Without waiting for the bank staff to react, black matter had already overflowed from the spatial rift cut open by the light sword. A truth magic sword that was completely dyed black. Even though the bank staff had reacted in the shortest time possible, his right leg was bitten and the range of his movement was limited. Even if he jumped back a step, he still couldn't escape the attack range. Crack! The magic sword slashed down and cut into the golden edge. Chapter 1858. A golden beam of light shot straight into the sky. Layers of air waves rippled out from the surface of the frozen earth. The previously scorched surface was now completely disintegrated. Only a few bone layers maintained the integrity of the frozen earth continent. Bottom of the temple. The matchstick man, whose image was similar to the Razor Gang, was preparing for the final execution of the Empress. Seeing that the match was about to fall into the other party's mouth, a strong vibration caused the match to deviate and fall toward the open space. The matchstick man was also very clear that this land could no longer withstand any large-scale explosion. He could only pinch the burning match and forcibly extinguish it. Cough, cough, cough. As he coughed, black smoke came out of his mouth. What is that guy doing? Why is he making such a big commotion? On the surface, a golden figure quickly escaped and landed on the edge of a large pit that was 1,000 meters wide. And in between the deep pits, an arm wrapped in gold fell to the ground. As the main body was removed, the gold rim was slowly fading, and the whole body was gradually dyed black, until it completely merged into the black land and turned into Han Dong's energy nutrients. Eugenus, whose neck was almost torn off, was twitching on the ground. The black mountain of flesh that covered his entire body also showed a state of dilapidation. Even so, Eugenus still gritted his teeth and stood up from the ground. Bop and Han Dong's expressions were not good. The opportunity just now was exchanged for by Eugenus' desperation. It was almost impossible to get the same opportunity again. It was difficult for such a sneak attack to work a second time. Can you even dodge this? Han Dong's target was the head. When he slashed, he also used the power of the demon eye. A restrictive force from the demon eye of the undead acted on the bank employee's entire body. Who knew? When the demon sword was about to split his head, an unimaginable golden light shot straight into the sky, tearing apart all the restrictions. The bank employee's superhuman physique also made a super-fast deflection movement, causing the sword that should have beheaded him to deviate and land on the surface of his shoulder. Although the power of the demon sword lived up to expectations, it only cut off an arm, which was not enough to force the other party to retreat. While Han Dong and Bop were thinking about how to carry out another battle plan, the bank employee's voice suddenly came from the edge of the pit. Okay, stop hitting. If you keep hitting me, I'll run out of money. The cost of repairing a whole arm is very high, so I have to keep some savings. In case there is any trouble on the way back, I will be a burden to Mr. Match. In any case, we will definitely meet again. Next time, I will bring all of my savings. I hope you can follow me and reach the king level. At that time, we can have a real fight. You guys can go now. I don't want these things anymore. I'll explain it to Mr. Match later. Han Dong and Bop's eyes lit up. Although this sentence sounded deliberate, the fact that the bank staff did not chase after him was the best proof. Although Bop still had a lot of energy left, however, Eugenus had almost reached his limit. If he continued, he might be devoured by the demonic codex. Han Dong's thinking had become extremely negative under the influence of the black man. He was only thinking about how to avoid the battle. In addition, the matchstick man could emerge from the ground at any time. If they continued to fight, the probability of all of them dying here was extremely high. Han Dong immediately responded, "That's settled." "Then it's settled. When you successfully escape from the Black Tower, please make a trip to S01. At that time, I'll definitely receive you well." While Han Dong was speaking, Bob had quietly drawn a void array. S01? This is the most dangerous world, but we will definitely come back later. After all, Mr. Teacher hates you to the core. Under his persuasion, the committee should put the occupation of S01 on the agenda. Hurry up and leave. If Mr. Match comes up, you won't be able to leave. There was no anger on the bank staff's face at all. He didn't care about the battle that had just happened at all. Even if his right arm was cut off, it was more of a satisfaction and enjoyment. In other words, he still admired this group of young people who could cause him harm as mythical creatures. This was something that even all the powerhouses in the world where he was born could not do. Buzz. The array was activated. Han Dong and the other two were teleported to a location about 3 kilometers away from the plant planet's hidden point. Eugenius, who had removed the demonic codex posture, had completely lost the ability to move. If it weren't for the outer muscles formed by the mountain of flesh wrapping around his body, he would probably have turned into a lump of disgusting and smelly green rotten meat and scattered between dimensions. Han Dong's condition was still okay. He returned to the planet alone. Bob stretched out a starlight thread from his fingertips and dragged Eugenius. When they returned to the main laboratory, Dr. Swollen was released and drove the planet away from the current area at full speed. Han Dong also leaned against the corner and reached out to pull off the black mask used for borrowed God's disguise from his face. All the black was teleported back with the Godhead. Huff, huff, huff. He gasped for breath. His body had basically reached its limit, but his face was full of smiles. The harvest of this trip was really great. This time, the perfect fusion of borrowed God and the black vortex torso brought about intuitive enlightenment and benefits for Han Dong. As a result, the compatibility of the dark magic puzzle increased from 45% to 70%. More importantly, Han Dong also had a certain understanding of this dark art. Moreover, a part of the blackened attribute was still left in the Truth Demon Sword, becoming one of the important components of its growth period. Of course, the most important thing was to get the true copy of the demonic codex. I never thought that the rampagers of C would actually appear here. There's a high probability that they established a connection to the outside world through the Rubik's Cube that I've seen before and came to our open shatter dimension. The question is, did they come to our side by chance? Or did they come here specifically to explore, or even want to use this place as a temporary transit point after they escape from the Black Tower? Bob continued, "Report what happened here to the teacher. He will naturally come up with countermeasures. You should be tired. Hurry and rest for a while. We can't rule out the danger yet." The other party must have deliberately let us leave and quietly followed behind our planet through special tracking techniques. Okay, when the stickman dragged a bag of frozen skulls to the surface of the frozen soil, he revealed a look of shock. Your hand is actually broken, and it's not an ordinary cut. A cut on the truth level is not easy to repair. Was there a real king in the team you were chasing? The stickman still recognized the strength of the bank staff. Otherwise, the two of them would not have formed an exploration team. I guess so. Sigh. It's a pity that they ran away. There's nothing we can do about it. The guy I dealt with down there was also quite troublesome, and it took a lot of time. The chill in his body also needs to be slowly expelled. When the engineers finish collecting information, we'll go back to C first. Every time the stickman spoke, he would exhale cold air. Part of his body had been frostbitten, and it also had the characteristic of pollution. When they successfully withdrew from C, and wanted to report their exploration experience and encounter, the president's attention was drawn to the main body of the president. However, he discovered that the Grand President's avatar was completely attracted by the mystical items brought back by another team. He had even called upon a large number of engineers to build special containers to store the mystical items. Through the crowd, the bank staff could vaguely see a few strange pages floating between the containers. Chapter 1859. The negative feelings brought about by the black man made Han Dong sleep very soundly. Eugenius, who had almost disintegrated into rotten meat, was thrown into the life tank of the spaceship to be nourished and repaired. Only Pope was still in a good state. Dr. Swollen, who was in charge of controlling the planet, asked, "Mr. Pope, where are we going now? Continue to go deeper into the broken dimensions?" "No, we'll go back to the main world first. I'm not sure if the other party has used special means to mark us. Since we've gained something, we'll go back and reorganize first. At the same time, we'll report our encounter to the teacher. If Nicholas still wants to find other pages, we'll enter from another crack. It won't take too long." Okay. The black man also affected Pope to a certain extent. A drop of ink could be vaguely seen in his head. Although it had no substantial effect, it still brought some negative thoughts. "Mr. Pope, you should sleep for a while. Just leave the return trip to me." "Well, I'll take a little rest." Just as Pope was about to take a nap, a strange feeling suddenly came, and his eyes quickly fell on the sleeping Han Dong. A black vortex space opening visible to the naked eye appeared on his abdomen. The truth demonic sword, which was sheathed in a scabbard, actually came out by itself while Han Dong was sleeping. "I have to wake up the Lord." Just as the doctor was about to merge into Han Dong's brain and wake him up, a surge of spatial power restrained him. "Don't worry. Waking up Nicholas is likely to affect or even destroy this opportunity. Let the demonic sword evolve by itself first. If it goes out of control halfway, consider waking up Nicholas." Okay, Dr. Swollen still chose to listen to Pope's opinion. After all, the other party was much more knowledgeable than himself. The demonic sword that came out of the black vortex space was suspended in the air. As a sword-like instrument, the demonic sword had followed Han Dong for so long, and it also constantly absorbed the energy needed for growth from the main body. The truth demonic sword was like a very picky eater. If it was fed the same food for a long time, it would soon get tired of it. This was also the reason why the previous masters could not control it. He was completely different from the previous masters of the Black Tower. Han Dong's body was constantly emitting different types of energy. There were all kinds of attributes, and they were all of relatively high quality. So far, he had absorbed 3 different types of borrowed divine energy, including the Sabbath Baron, the Night Howler, and this time, the Black Man. Furthermore, as Han Dong used it many times, recognition also increased. When he cut off the king's arm head-on this time, the demon sword's acknowledgement towards Han Dong increased greatly. It even gave the sword the satisfaction of killing a king. Now it has passed the embryonic stage and is changing into a completely new stage. Once the growth was complete, a new trait, ability, or growth skill would be born. Something drilled out from the surface of the flowing sword. It looked like some kind of thorny plant, but also like black veins. These strips were not in the shape of a magic sword. Instead, they were pointing at Han Dong's forehead, as if they wanted to drill into his brain. Seeing this, Dr. Swollen was sweating profusely. Bop reminded him again, "Don't worry, this kind of growth-type weapon needs to be in contact with the main body when it undergoes important growth changes. If there are any problems, I will stop it immediately." The strips drilled into Han Dong's head and penetrated into the space of consciousness. Just as Bop said, it would undergo important growth changes according to Han Dong's subconscious. Since the demon sword was taking the initiative to refer to the opinions of Han Dong, the main body, it meant that it had basically recognized this master. Suddenly, the magic eye of truth between Han Dong's eyebrows suddenly opened and stared at the demon sword suspended in the air. The strips that drilled into his brain also stuck to the magic eye, absorbing the energy in the eyeball, visible to the naked eye. The magic eye was slowly shrinking and falling into weakness during this process. When a shriveled and tired magic eye of truth closed between his eyebrows, an eye similar to it opened on the surface of the demon sword. Even the effect of the Book of the Dead can be transformed and replicated. When Bop saw this scene, a trace of envy rose in his heart, and even some greed emerged. However, this negative emotion was quickly suppressed. Next, with this eyeball as the center, the Truth Demon's sword began to build a new physical form. A new form that leaned toward Han Dong as the main body. It passed the embryonic form and entered the next stage. An unknown amount of time passed. When Han Dong woke up, the negative emotions in his head had basically dissipated. Have you returned to the main universe? Bop said with an indifferent expression. However, Teacher is currently not in the void space. He should be presiding over the Sharphorn Conference to discuss whether to cooperate with the Black Tower. Let's wait here. By the way, some changes happened during the hibernation. You should be able to feel it, right? Changes? Why is my eye withered? Han Dong immediately noticed that the demon eye was in a dormant state and could not even open the most basic of eyes. However, when he checked the situation in his body, he immediately caught a strange change coming from within. Buzz! Han Dong immediately went into the prison world in the Faceless One's head. The transformation project here had just been completed. Two engineers borrowed from the Ladybug Foundation were about to explain the transformation of the prison world to Han Dong. Wait a moment, the two of you. I have something to do. I'll be right up. He immediately took the elevator to the underground experimental area. The doctor was nervously guarding the door of a laboratory in the deepest level, or rather, an isolation room used to imprison special experimental subjects. Overlord, when its transformation was completed, it automatically returned to the prison world, considering that it emitted an extremely dangerous aura that might cause damage to the newly transformed world. I guided it here and temporarily sealed it. The changes that happened during my hibernation? Why didn't you wake me up? It was Mr. Bop's request. He said that waking you up might affect this opportunity. Open the door. The doctor quickly inserted his palm into the semi-open brain and took out a variable key made of a mixture of brain stem and bone. The door, made of the most advanced biological material, slowly opened. A feeling of being watched came from inside. This feeling of being watched. Is it the demon eye? Just as Han Dong was about to step inside, a strange-looking demon sword that still retained some of its embryonic characteristics was inserted into the ground, as if waiting for Han Dong to pull it out. One sword body. From the former flow state, it changed into a solid sword body composed of black blood vessels. Between the blood vessels, there was also the flow of the former cosmic fluid. In the middle of the black blood vessels, there was a single eye similar to the demon eye. Upon closer inspection, it was different from the demon eye. 2. Sword hilt. This change was even greater. It directly turned into a stone structure that exuded a strong aura of death, like a gray tombstone. The surface was also engraved with Warren Nicholas's initials, W. Such a tombstone sword hilt was more suitable for the left hand to wield, and it could exert unexpected power. When Han Dong suppressed his excitement and held the demon sword, a prompt sounded frowny-faced Trindus's lost demon sword. Eraser of Truth has evolved to adult. All values and recognition of the main body have changed. Please check. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.